All right, we're live. I am Joshua Kemble, and this is my live stream where I work on the sequel to my graphic novel, Two Stories. And right now I'm working on roughs and thumbnails for the next book, and I'll be working on a page 121, which I'm actually pretty excited about. I did kind of a vlog about that a little earlier, and was just mentioning just like how I was really stoked to kind of reach like that milestone, like getting closer to reaching the milestone of like finishing the rough for this book. So I'm actually pretty stoked about that. And I usually do like a big thing at the top where I talk about who I am and stuff like that. I'll just say I'm an illustrator, graphic designer, full-time art director, parent, and then when I'm not doing that and then doing vlogs on my commute to where I do art direct, I'm working on my graphic novel, and you can pick it up on Amazon.com. It's a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. And I think it's on sale for like $8, which is kind of insane. It's like 60% off. So it's a good time to check out that book. All right, so I'm just going to jump into it and start working. I will say before I get to work, oh, how's it going, Gary? How you doing, man? Oh, by the way, if you want, you are free to hop on the chats. If you hop on the video, I could send you a link. If not, no worries too. Jake, same. Adam, same. But yeah, so I was pretty stoked. I got like a display rack for Two Stories, and it's like a 4-tier rack that goes like on a tabletop. It's really cool. I'm sure I'll take pictures of it when I do my signings on like the 2nd and the 3rd. But I'm pretty stoked. So gradually things are arriving in the mail that are prepping me for like conventions and signings and stuff. Yeah, Gary, that sounds good. And then Jake was saying to shoot him a link, so I will shoot him a link. Let me see here. And then I got to actually open the let's see where we're at. Finding where I had the there it is. Okay. Okay. All right. Jake, sending you a link. And let's see here. All right. So yeah, so anyhow, I'm going to be getting going on this and seeing what all I can get done. But I am pretty stoked to get this far. And like, honestly, I think, I don't know. I think today I'm going to get even further, which is cool. So we'll see. How many pages do I have left to do roughs on? That's a good question, Adam. It is, let's see. I've got about 2.5, which is pretty cool, of script. That's all I have left. So pretty cool. Just on the rough stage. So it's the first half. Oh, let me throw you on, Jake. How's it going, man?
Hey, man.
How you doing?
It is early morning, 7 a.m.
Oh, no way. What are you doing at
7 a.m.? Being awake since 10 p.m. I flipped the days around again. So,
oh, yeah. Got it. Yeah, that's funny because I actually do that when it like I have a full-time art director gig where I have to be there at like 8 in. But pre that, like when it was just my own business, it was like my hours were all over the place, dude. Because it's like, I'd tend to start my workday at like 10 p.m. and then go to bed at like 12 noon.
Right.
This is weird. It's always a fun one. Then every once in a while you have to kind of like reset the schedule to be like alive at some point.
Yeah.
So what puts you on those weird hours? Is it deadlines?
Actually,
just
no. It's just me not getting proper sleep rhythm. I've been like this for like a week. I would say, yeah, a week.
Yeah, been there.
And I mean, I did it sort of like self-imposed in the weekend because I was going to catch an interview that I had to be up at around 4 a.m. to in my local time zone to catch, as I was the one that was going to be interviewed. So yeah.
Got it. That's cool. How did that interview go? Was it good?
Oh, we talked like heaven and earth, and it was a 3 hour 3 hour windbag.
Sounds fun. Let's see here. I'm just plugging away at these things. So you're working on the comic that can't be named?
Not at the moment. I'm working on
okay.
a different one.
Oh, nice.
I'm working on a script.
Cool.
I've been sort of like throwing that on and off the stove right now because I just hit up my editor and just asked a bunch of questions before I can move on with anything and further. So I'm just like reverting back to something that I do have more creative control and a little bit more sense of direction with, because that is sort of like the hard part when you know that you're like boundaryless. How much of that boundary do you really have to set yourself before it becomes before it breaks not only your work out of like subjective taste and everything, but how well it matches and meshes with the other works that you're going to do. Because the one that I had to put on pause right now was part of an anthology. Excuse me, I'm just going to spit out the gum. And so that whole like thing really put me off chart, and has been doing that for the past couple of days, like almost a week, 2 weeks almost. And I don't know, it sort of like stops me from creating the design, stops me from doing the layouts and all that stuff. I know the thumbs in my head, it's just that I can't put it or plug it out in my on like paper. And now I'm just like reverting back to the other thing that I'm going to practice on. It's sort of like a more like a collection of short stories, but they happen like chronologically, and it's like about this gull with a broken wing and a sea witch.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a Yashike Healing manga type of story.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to like mix it up with a little bit of like comedy and lightheartedness and just like a sense of like environmental beauty and all that stuff.
That sounds kind of awesome, actually.
Yeah, it's in collaboration with another guy. I've talked about it earlier in other conversations in the chat about it being like in a deadline between mid-July, but I'm also like going to submit it for the local publishing in August.
Got it. So this is the one for the Norwegian anthology.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Well, for both an English and a Norwegian edition.
That's awesome. I don't know. It sounds kind of like a fable or something, which is always a fun thing to like illustrate.
Well, I think the one that I put on pause now is more or less more of like a fable-based story, as this one has a little bit more of world building to it, but it's not integral to the plot or anything aside from like this one thing with the protagonist.
Okay.
The protagonist, I for the longest time had struggled with the protagonist not finding her voice in a sense. So I thought, hey, let's play with that. Let's make the comedic situations based on the thing that she can't laugh or utter a sound. So I thought up this like challenge, and so the challenge was sort of like a weird witch tradition that if you're going to be eligible to enter Coven, you have to go through this whole whole like spring solstice tradition while you're
Okay.
going to while you have to be under observation by something or someone throughout a 100-day period where you have to help uh, help nature in a sense, or cultivate nature
Okay.
at like a fixed point. So like the school is not mentioned, the thing is not mentioned aside from like that challenge in and of itself, and it's all hinted at and just like visually cued most of the
Hmm.
time. It's not much as a witch story as it's more like a living everyday life in a way.
Okay. So it's like a slice of life story about a witch. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's kind
yeah.
of a cool approach. I actually I don't know. I need to read more about like the Netflix adaptation, but I was a really big fan of the Sandman. And one of the things I liked about the approach to some of the stories, like some of them are like just heavily like mythological and stuff, but then some of them just are like these slice of life kind of windows into like these mythic figures, you know. And
Hmm.
I always found that like a really cool approach. Just you know,
Yeah, one of my favorite stories I think from the Sandman run was the one with War, because he was like part of like a an archaeological dig team, and it was more it was playing around with just this woman who is like digging out some archaeological site in the Mediterranean on a volcanic island,
huh?
and so it sort of like leads into um, destruction. That's his name. Destruction's sort of exile away from like uh, war and famine and struggle and all that stuff. And it's sort of like a sweet, like a bittersweet love story, I think.
Huh. I think I remember that one. It's weird because I'm like not remembering that in the salmon, but then I think I am remembering it because it's is that the sort of tale that like it's kind of told from the standpoint of like a father talking to his son about like this tradition they have to uphold, and like he kind of has his like son go out in the forest
No,
or
I
like
don't
on a
remember
long
the
journey.
story that clearly. I read
Oh,
this
okay.
like years ago. So,
Oh,
and
okay.
with that, my drawback is that I read too much and watch too much stuff, so I can't
Yeah.
remember the storylines and all of that. But I can
Okay.
recall faint memory of certain elements of it. If
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I'm the same way. That's why I was like, I think I remember that, and I was trying to connect it to what I remember, but I'm the same exact way with things, especially things I've read. Like
yeah,
sometimes they blur together.
I think it is sort of like led me to this whole hypothesis. It's not a theory, but I think that well, I'm of the belief that if you don't have like a lot of access to media,
Yeah,
you tend to consume and like relive that story over and over again more faithfully in that vein that it's the only thing that you can attach yourself into. You know, you can
yeah,
engross yourself, and you remember that story a hell of a lot better than most other people, like to like specific details, where they've been, what their characteristics are, and you know, you just really delve into it. But as soon as you start to like consume more stories, I mean, it's sort of like a gradual thing. Like if you go on to be exposed onto other comics, movies, music, etc.,
yeah,
uh, that sort of like memory gap will start to expand a little bit more, and so you can only remember a few fragments. Because I was sort of like remembering really faithfully ElfQuest when I was little, because
yeah,
it was just one of the few comics that I really owned and just dived into. But over the years, I've forgotten it, most of it.
yeah,
Although that that I love it like very deeply. It's a fun book. I'm I'm just too like detached from it, not only because there's been so much time between it, but it's come along like other things like video game stories
Yeah.
and other type of like interests and more important works that have filled my life and all that. So it's sort
Yeah.
of hard to fill that in. And by the way, congratulations with the refs.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's taken a while, but I'm getting there. It's it's funny. I like try to gamify the process. It kind of actually this ties in a little bit with what you said earlier about kind of boundaries. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you start art without boundaries, like that can be somewhat limiting. And at least for me, like I like working on my own creative projects because I get to set my own boundaries, and so I don't have to wait for somebody to give feedback on something to kind of go forward with it. So there's a lot less like stops and starts and a lot less compromise, like where it's like if like if you're working with a writer that you really like, but they make a visual call that you think is the wrong call, like you kind of compromise and sort of, you know, a lot of the times end up with something stronger for it. But when it's your own work, like you get to be your own kind of author, and so you don't have to compromise your art. But the downside of like working on personal projects, particularly like like in my scenario, like my publisher's like a pretty small publisher, so they don't really give like tons of editorial feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I have to kind of seek out my own editorial feedback. Like I have friends that I rely on that are like hardcore English nerds and just like love love little details, like when it comes to punctuation or spelling, and I'll have them like review my scripts and stuff like that. And then aside from that, I also break my projects down like very thoroughly into like these kind of my own like self-imposed guides, or I'll come up with like a limitation, like in general, like my comic needs to stick to like a 9-panel grid, and then it'll break the grid, but at least I have that there. Or when I'm lettering, I usually, will try to kind of limit myself to like 2 typefaces and maybe like 2 sizes. Just stupid little rules that help me, because like by imposing those rules, then I like actually within the box that I've like built, I feel free. Whereas if I don't have any sort of guardrails or anything to what I'm doing, it just to me it can end up being like this scenario of just nothing getting done, or like I don't know. It's definitely interesting, but like for my own projects, I have to like make my own little like structures and rules.
So look from a perspective of not boundaries, but rather more or less as a negotiation with the
Yeah.
work. Do you think that you're a strong negotiator by yourself?
I'm a pretty good negotiator, actually. It depends on the scenario. I mean, you can't be an art director without knowing how to negotiate. At least like where I'm at, it's like you have to be able to talk money, you have to be able to talk business, you have to be able to talk bottom line, and also like you have to be able to make a deal and negotiate. Yeah, for sure. So I'm okay at it. I'm not like a king at it, but I'm decent.
Yeah, but as more or less the visual storyteller and the script writer, in a sense, do you feel like you're stronger of a negotiator in that area as well, aside from being an art director? Because that will imply that you're not only overseeing it, but also, at least what you said about being a CFO and all that stuff, and being in control of like the budget and the time management. But
Yeah.
thinking creatively also, I think, is sort of like a negotiation process that you have to like
Oh, okay.
necessarily take to account for.
Yeah. I think I was thrown off by the negotiation, but I think I see what you mean in the context. So
No, it's more or less like an open-ended question, because
yeah.
you can take it at any direction. But
Yeah.
I'm
It's a good one.
by me like putting it in that sense, I'm just leading the question a little bit further onto
Yeah.
that side of things.
Yeah, I like that side. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think to me, I tend to separate it out. So I'm my worst client in the sense of when I'm writing a script, I'm literally thinking like, what will be the best story, and then when I'm the person having to do the process I'm doing now, I have to make that story work. And sometimes I'll write myself into boxes that I would hate if it was another writer. Where like there have definitely been times where it's like, could I have maybe intended to have like 20 less people in this panel? Like, but the nice thing is when it's your own stuff, it's like, it's not some arbitrary thing where you're like, if you write like that you need something to take place in like a Coliseum and have every head of the person in the Coliseum or something drawn, like when it's your own work, it's like you want that impact. You're not just kind of arbitrarily like throwing that in there, I would imagine,
Well, that would be to
it is a
gratify.
pain,
That would be to gratify your own senses, then, or like your own ego, like testing out how far you can like draw out the picture before it becomes too overwhelming with information, right?
yeah.
But it doesn't communicate effectively as much as you like.
Yeah.
But instead you're like putting real craft and real work into it. But
yeah,
it could stray away in a sense. I'm terrible at that too.
yeah,
Not like that I'm a big expert when it comes to like drawing, because I'm lacking. I'm struggling with a lot of things there on that department, but I really want to like point out the effectiveness and the things that I do wish to communicate to the audience.
Yeah.
As clear as I can, at least.
Yeah, and I think clarity's got to be when you're doing cartooning. It's like I don't know. There's different things. I mean, I definitely wouldn't dissuade someone from doing a panel that like where they can render it because it's beautiful. Like sometimes that's great, or just to have like a quiet moment in a story, or to give it atmosphere or feeling. But I definitely think like the primary goal you have to have like when you're cartooning is clarity of storytelling. So if like, for instance, if like you were, in that hypothetical where you're like drawing every single person in like a Coliseum, if that's unnecessarily distracting from the story, then like maybe don't, because I think like every intention and choice should be kind of based on story and like what's the right emotional impact you can have for like the beat that you're like trying to make in your story.
Adam says, I think scenes like that are being as that being high budget. Yeah, shots more importantly, like double page spreads or just bleeds and all that stuff. That with that added onto it, it could give sort of a spectacle. But that is sort of like that is sort of putting a pause on the story as well.
Yeah,
because then you're primarily like focusing on what this beat is of the whole like story.
Yeah.
You can see that with a lot of work, and I think that is sort of boundaryless when it comes to some artists. James Deco is one of them. He puts in such amount of detail when it comes to certain like midgrounds and foregrounds into his works. But that's because he's developed sort of a pattern into the way that he communicates his story, and although it's very effective the way that he does it, he's sort of giving that extra. He's bumping it up with an extra level of care, with an extra level of energy to it, by just filling out more details. You could definitely see that in like Godzilla Half Century War. So
yeah, I definitely I think you mentioned something that's pretty important, which is like I think it works when it's adding. It's almost like like if you're doing like a bunch of decoration to like a house that's just like torched on the inside, like, but you're just spending all this time just making it look gorgeous and putting like fake ornamentation all over it. You still have a rotten house, right? Like, and like I think but I think like if you are doing that to a house that's like solid and good on the inside, and it's like a good house, and then like you're just decorating the outside and making it look twice as good, like that's beneficial, right? That ups the value of the thing. So it's like I think of it like that with comics for sure, where it's like spectacle is good. Sometimes there can be stories where it's just like the entire goal of the story is spectacle, like maybe it's just like a car race, and it's just gonna like the whole entire story is just like a crazy car chase. A lot of that's gonna be spectacle, right? But it's like but I do think if you have like the padding of like a really solid story, and then the spectacle is just like additional, like it's like a flourish that you're adding on something that's already solid. I think that's great.
Yeah,
What
sort of like demonstrates control of pacing too.
Yeah, for sure. What would bum me out is like if everything was like unnecessarily spectacle and there was like no substance,
Yeah, because you need like with art communicate effectively time.
Yeah.
Most importantly within that space. So if you have like the way that I envision like grand scenes and all that, it has to be like a breather.
Yeah.
But it has to establish something.
Yep.
It has to either be like an establishing shot over a city or of some kind of like event that is going on. I can think of several, but I don't want to go into like deep detail when it comes to that. Or it has to be introduced. It has to introduce something that will take your breath away, and sort of like, what was that? One of the like the introductions to one of the enemies in Berserk, for instance, the manga, was with Zod flying above the head of above like a group of soldiers, and you can see like Zod in his beast form just like soaring through the air in this grimy forest, dark, very wooden area, and it was done by using like a double page spread with a bleed, and that was sort of to point out that there's something something otherworldly that exists within the world, and carries into like an important part of the whole tale in of itself.
Yeah.
I have one scene like that planned right at the beginning of my epic saga. Once that scene is over, everything will be way easier to draw for sure. I'm highly critical of a lot of Batman action. In that I want to see Batman being on like being on the chase for some scenes or being like in an action, and I want that communicated clear to me. But I also want like, for example, like dive shots from the city top of Gotham to be like that. That sort of like captivates that emotion of like he's on the move, and a couple of like pause beats with the Batmobile, for instance. That stuff is what comes to me. But at the same time, we want to ease up on the drawing by just adding a couple of like crude speed lines, and that is what manga does a lot of the time too, and what has been more and more embraced as time has gone on from developing comics. At least it got around to it in like in the 80s and all that stuff. But negative space in American comics has changed a lot too. The way that we perceive speed now is being more thought of.
Yeah, that is true. Manga also just like still to this day, I haven't seen speed lines in American comics that just like it's not as often to see ones that are as effective as like manga speed lines. They're just like the best.
Yeah.
They also have like the best bursts. Yeah, for sure.
But I know I'm dragging it in this, but this is more like steered by my subconscious, and that I've been writing a paper on this bullshit for for a good amount of days, like 5 days, because I'm sort of like making up for a manga class that I arranged at the beginning of May
Okay.
for the AAA community server,
Oh,
and
nice.
I just didn't know that I had so much to talk about when it came to the matter that I accidentally churned out like 4,000 unedited, unsighted words, and I just like threw it out in the ether there. And I'm still chugging along, and it's all just based on genre for the most part. It has nothing to do with making them effectively communicating and replicating manga in art style just yet. I just had to like get that part down before I can move on. And
Nice.
that'll be in probably another 5,000 words, and I just want to get it done with because we got a deadline, and I can't blog about this thing anymore than I have to. So my goal is like I got to be finishing this up until like 1st of July, no 1st of June, 1st of June. Sorry, or else
Nice.
it will just rack more my head and not be of any use to the people that I promised this would be like helping.
It's interesting. It's that's a tough one though, because it's almost like being. I mean, is it just in general? I should look at this paper, but is it just in general, like overall, just like an overview of manga as a whole? Because that is a
You can
huge
say that.
task.
Yeah, you can say that.
That's a pretty huge task.
Like the preface part is about 2,000 words long.
I love it. That's
That should be
awesome.
like a 10-minute read, less probably, 5-10 minutes. Um, the
You
thing that I
should
want,
do
yeah,
a video about it. You know?
I've been asked to,
Yeah.
because
Why not?
like people want to know these things and they want to have it on film, but I just can't like make myself do that because then the production would take too long. Like it will take like 6 months to even like
Yeah.
prepare one thing.
And then when are you going to make comics on top of that?
Yeah.
That's one of
So
the hard things about making comics is it's a constant negotiation of like, well, I'd like to do this, but then when will I do my comic?
mm-hmm.
I'm even navigating that now that I'm gonna start kind of booking different like signings and stuff, and gradually kind of working my way different cities and stuff. Um, it's all got to be balanced on top of like this, and if this doesn't get done, then the whole book promotion thing's kind of useless because the first book won't mean much without a second.
I mean,
you know.
that's sort of like why you create buffers and
Mm-hmm.
create double projects or quadruple projects on top of that, so that you have something easier to work on
Yeah.
rather than the long form stuff. So you gotta cut it up with a little bit of like short. And if you are your own artist and scripter, you're in luck because like the benefit of it is that you can throw a first draft onto like onto a mobile like device. You could do that with a touchpad with a keyboard attached to it, a laptop or whatever, and you can start churning out scripts. Meanwhile, as you do your travels or stuff like that, or I wouldn't suggest like that you start scripting while you're driving because you need both hands on the wheel.
That might be helpful. Yeah.
But if you would have like an assistant probably that could like transcribe it for you, well shit, start using the people around you to do that whenever you're driving around and all that, when you go to cons and to sightings and stuff. But
Yeah.
the thing is, you just gotta seize the opportunity when it is there
Oh
before
yeah.
you.
Yeah, and I
And
mean
when you're
that's
at like at a
yeah.
hotel room at late at night and there's nothing on the idiot box, just like plop down and just start churning out something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean it. It's interesting. I also like I think the main reason this is like I literally like actually I have to get this done. this is the main project until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the idea of like potentially like that is a good time to start, especially like just scripting and coming up with like the next thing. Is not a bad idea like during those times.
Yeah. I enter like creative mode all the time whenever I'm working on something else. And when I do access that thing, I start to run around and find other inspirations and sources. I just did that today.
Mm-hmm.
I just read like this one post on Twitter, and I was like, "Damn, I could make a story out of that."
Yeah.
Or just watched a YouTube video earlier as well, and I thought of, "Hey, I could do a story about frogging. You know, the house squatting thing that you live in other people's houses, but they don't know that you live there, and like in the
Wasn't
attic
there
and
a
stuff."
manga about that? Like, what was that? I feel like there was a movie based on a manga that was all about house squatters that end up like getting murdered or something. I don't know. It's a crazy one.
Oh yeah, Parasite.
Parasite. Thank you. I
But
was like, yeah,
yeah, that's sort of like in the mid movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that
Um,
wasn't that originally a manga too?
no, I don't
No.
think so.
Oh, it was a manga. Okay, my wife just said that. Yeah,
Really, no.
yeah. I
I
think
saw
it was.
this
Let's
because I
see.
saw the storyboard version being printed. It's sort of like a comic form.
Huh. Let's
I know
see.
that I know that Old Boy was created based on a manga.
Oh
Park
my
Chan Wook.
gosh.
I gotta look that up.
Now I'm really curious. Whoa, this is crazy. I wonder if this is maybe just a different parasite. But yeah, it sounds like there is a manga called
No,
Parasite.
there's the other manga, Parasite, the Y. That is a different manga.
Okay, so my
It's
wife is probably just thinking of that one. Yeah.
yeah, because there's a Parasite manga in which like there are a couple of like aliens that falls down from the earth, and they sort
Huh.
of take over human bodies by invading them. But
So it's like Invasion of the Body
body
Snatchers.
snatchers, exactly. But they're like apex predators, so they are they're aliens essentially with no empathy, or they don't understand they don't have the ability to empathize or carry out altruism, and so they mesh in and blend in with society and sort of kill humans on the down low. And one of the protagonists, he sort of fends himself off and manages to trap the one alien in his hand. And there's like a time they run on because they have to like reach the brain to settle the root, and so to control the host body. And so he creates more like he is sort of like a shares body with an alien that lives in his hand. That's Parasite. I do
Huh.
think that there's a live action adaptation of it. There's also an anime of it. Came out in like 2015, 2016.
So I'm trying to think of a way to do. Let me see. Can do this. It's just. Oh, let's see. Okay. Let's see something real quick. So, what are you scripting now then? So, you're scripting the story about the witch and the bird?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That sounds like I could see really. I still could. So, are you going to kind of focus on the bird more than like and have the witch? Like, who's going to be kind of the primary focus, like visually?
Um, I think it's more like shared in that. Um, the bird. It's not only just like the gull and her. There's also a cat, which is the overseer of the whole like test thing. So he's gonna be very cheeky and try to like lure her into laughing as well, sort of like to add on to the challenge. So it's basically like a straight man and a funny man scenario.
Nice. Sounds
And
like a good bit.
And like the main character, it's not like a main character, but more like a cast of characters.
Nice. Very cool. I would like to see Adam. So Adam, you're going to do a crazy high budget page. I think that's awesome. Or panel. I think I like the idea of high budget panels. The thing I love about comics is you can do anything. As nerdy as it is, but it's like you really don't have budget limitations. I mean, you do, but it's not quite like film where, if you wanted like to do like a perfect example would be like a convention scene or something, right? Like you want a packed convention full of people in your story. If you were to film that, you'd have such a nightmare getting that together, getting the rights to film it, getting the extras. If there are extras, like even if you're trying to guerrilla shoot it, just like trying to shoot it in a way where not everybody's like staring at the camera every once in a while. Getting city permits and stuff to film. But as an artist, you can just draw it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. More creative control. It's not a bad. It's not a bad thing, like to trade off just by working with yourself. Because at the end of the day, do you want to deal with copyright on top of having to deal with other people and city and permissions and shooting locations and all that stuff when you could just draw it on a couple like paper sheets on a line? I mean,
yeah,
come on.
Agreed. Yeah. It's funny though. My wife is also. Oh, whoa! Hang on a second. Oh, okay. I think Jake might have disappeared. So, okay. You there?
Sorry.
No worries.
I pushed the wrong button.
I thought I did. I was worried I booted you off.
No, it was mine.
Yeah, I have that happen sometimes if I'm doing like a shortcut and I'm accidentally on StreamYard rather than on Photoshop. I have that happen a lot when I just hit the space bar a lot just to be able to move the page, and every once in a while. So yeah, my wife is an illustrator too, and she's like working on her kid's book while I'm doing the stream, and it's like right when I was like, yeah, and you can like just draw it, and she's like, yeah, just draw it, sarcastically, because I mean, obviously, like drawing like a giant convention scene or something would be pretty tough and time consuming. But still, even if you like cost, like if you priced it out and you were compensated very fairly, like way better than a comic company would compensate you, it still would be cheaper than shooting it. Like,
yeah,
so comics are cool.
I am sharing my screen. It says I'm just gonna like show you like a little bit of like concept art that I did.
Okay, hang on a sec. All right, as long as it's safe for work.
Yeah, it's safe for work. Don't worry about it, dude.
Throw it up.
So this was sort of like back in April when when me and the artist were consuming the story.
Okay, is this going to be like an all ages?
Yes, it is.
Oh, nice.
And so we thought of like, I thought it would be best set in like northern Norway in a sense, or like within the Arctic Circle, because then you get sparse nature, or very noticeably sparse nature with like the ocean view. And I stumbled upon like this weird shack. I don't have the reference photo at the moment, but I thought of retooling that whole like shack design into making it a small cabin with like a half size of like a ship that has been turned upside down on land, like nearby by the ocean side. and she's kind of like sleep in like this hammock, and like you can unhook the hammock when not sleeping in it for more like movable space inside of it. I'm very inspired by like that small house, tiny house movement in the U.S.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
sort of
that
like thought
movement.
out that I like that. So you got like tables that you have to like um, move out from the wall and like put up and all that.
Cool.
And yeah, and so I just like threw in a like an easy design of the main protagonist. We're not decided on the final design yet, and then it's got to be like a black-legged kitty I thought it would be nice because I like that type of gull in a design.
It's awesome.
One of my favorite part is that to like to like keep the witch aesthetic is that
Hmm.
you like combine the oilskin hat with sort of the design of a witch hat, and so you have like the flap of the oilskin hat. You just turn that like up in the front, and then you
Oh,
have
okay.
the back end of the brim just
Oh,
like
nice.
bend down like a neck protection for water from water splashes, and you have just extended tip instead of having a bold
I love
top.
it. So she can kind of look like a sailor, like from one angle, like if that's flipped up, but then
Mm-hmm.
like just turning like a little bit, and yeah, that's a cool design. That's a smart idea.
Yeah, I'm really like getting excited for doing that one, and
That
then
sounds
you have like
fun.
glass floats. I'm gonna like do one scene with like a glass float that will look into the previous life of the gull because it is sort of like myth in a sense that that gulls are like carries the souls of dead sailors and pirates and stuff.
Oh,
I want
okay,
to tap into that a little bit too, just like
awesome.
to add like a sense of like life into it, more like a meditation on life.
That's awesome. That sounds super fun, and like all ages is. I might possibly do an all ages like after this is done, because this is like the funny thing is even like so I'm doing a signing at a comic shop like next week, and it's like my biggest worry is like some 6-year old wanting to read my book because I'm like it's like yeah it's not an all ages book um unless like parents want their kids like talking about suicidal ideation and like using every bad word in the you know dictionary. So um I don't know like to me I think it would be cool. I don't know, it would be fun to do an all ages book at some point because I do love all ages comics when they're done well. I've even been really digging like the Dave Pilkey stuff that my kid likes.
Oh yeah,
I think it's pretty funny.
yeah. So I'm thinking of it like being a right call and like making it accessible for most people. It is sort of just like to stretch my legs into other territories because I do have stories that aren't necessarily just like fit for adults and all that stuff that I want to like do.
Yeah,
And it's just like to make it so that I don't grow rigid
yeah,
into one spot,
yeah. I think it's
and
good.
that is sort of like a wish that everyone has at some degree. It's just that they don't have maybe found themselves at the correct like place or like space to do that. But then again, the whole restrictions thing really do help because then you can negotiate out the story from there in a
Hmm.
sense.
Totally.
And I've flirted around with like a lot of um, um, like tapping into more kind-hearted narratives. Um, that doesn't necessarily imply death all the time or be at a constant in the background and all that stuff, but more or less like those smaller things because I really appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Um, and I think
Yeah.
that is also needed in the world.
Yeah. I think, like, I just think, I think the best thing, if I don't know, if you're doing cartooning, I think it's pretty cool when you can kind of stretch your muscles and do a different style every once in a while, or a different type of storytelling. And like, I think the great thing about comics is you can kind of do quite a lot of things. You know, it's like the downside is I've heard this. It's easier to go from doing material for like adults and then switching to all ages than it is to switch from all ages to like serious adult work.
But the problem is that's like a multifaceted problem. But before
Yeah.
I'm getting into like my part of it, why don't you explain your take on it?
So, well, I've just had friends. I've had more people I know have had trouble doing the other, because when you get known as like a kids illustrator and you start doing kind of more serious work, it's just hard to have people take you seriously. Which is weird because anybody who knows anything about kids books should know, like I think for people like us that are like artists, there's not much of a differentiation. Like a good story is a good story, a well illustrated book is a well illustrated book. Like they're not, and honestly, like some of the best illustrators in the world are like children's book illustrators,
Mm-hmm.
but I've just heard that can be a problem, that can be problematic. Whereas like, you know, I think in the reverse, it can be unproblematic unless you got into really seedy adult stuff, and then it might be hard to make that transition. You know?
Yeah. I see it as like two sort of not problems, but more like obstacles that
Mm-hmm.
that occurs. One is the mental process of reverting back to a time where you were innocent, or trying to like tap into that energy that you feel like when you're more like in a mindset of a child. That
Mm-hmm.
is difficult to do when you've been away from it for so long, and that's sort of the part of like growing up, and that you tend to forget and compress a lot of things that have happened to you. And if you don't
Yeah.
have like a good childhood, that might be a double problem or a double whammy. But uh cherishing work, like cherishing memories and things that happen like that you can like capture of like childhood innocence in a sense. I think that it becomes more accessible as time goes on and like into your 40s, because then you're starting up to loosen up in your in like that not everything is sort of like a race against time and all that stuff. You start to be a little bit more reflective about things, because you're being so ahead of the curve right now, or you're ahead of the curve in life, that you can now look back and sort of surmise and reminisce and all of these things, because that's sort of like what happens when you're entering at most extreme midlife crises. Midlife crisis is sort of trying to desperately surmount to something that might seem like an attainable or a reasonable goal enough to lead into like fulfilling a desire or dream that you had since you were a kid. For instance, you have the means or resources to do that. But for some people, it might be more of a more like you've come so far right now, and you might have children, you might not have children, that it's sort of like time to tackle that and put that into work. And
Yeah.
it's not as harder for you to do that. The other problem that will sort of like intertwine into that is that children's books are so fucking hard to write.
Yeah. So that's huge. Like, and actually one of the toughest things with writing material for kids is like it's hard to do it in a way that's not placating and out of touch with kids. Like one of the reasons I mentioned Dave Pilkey as like somebody I like for like kids books is like he makes like really lewd fart jokes and stuff, and they're funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's like, and his books aren't like for like older kids, like they're for kids, like little kids.
Mm-hmm.
But little kids think it's funny. Like it's like when you were a little kid, like most little kids think a lot of stuff's funny that adults are like, that's inappropriate. Like, so, and I think Roald Dahl was like a really good example of somebody who was like really clued into that with his writing. Like he wrote stories for kids that had real stakes. Like the kids in Roald Dahl's stories are in legitimate danger. Like they're not like, just in play danger and everything's soft padded and nice. It's like in James and the Giant Peach, like he's at risk for losing his life. Like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you literally have kids dying. Like, it's like,
like witches.
Yeah. And, so it's like one of those things of, I think like when somebody respects who they're writing for and really remembers what it was like to be a kid, I think you can get really great children's literature. I think it gets really bad when people overly idealize childhood, and then they'll kind of make these like stories that are like completely placating and kind of feel like a badly produced. I'm trying to think, but it's like I think we've all seen it. It's like a badly produced like kids cartoon on TV or something where it's like it's very gimmicky, like and soft padded, and like there's nothing raw or real about it,
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it has to be like this terribly brutal story. It's just like I think even Mr. Rogers, like weirdly enough, didn't really talk down to kids. And I think that's why it was such a successful show,
Listen, that's sort of like the power. You do you remember that episode? It's been brought up like to me as a great example of Mr. Rogers, and that there was an episode where he discussed the JFK assassination by using a metaphor of play a balloon.
For real?
Yeah.
No way.
He discussed life as being a balloon full of air, and he just illustrated it that when the air has run out, it's finite. Over. Kapoof.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense. But like important, like I don't know. I think I just think it's also hard to write because and they're hard to illustrate. I remember my wife does tons of them, like illustrates tons of them, but I remember like early in her career we went to SCBWI convention, which is like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And they had like a bunch of editors there, and like including one of the editors for like Scholastic. I think it was like they're not, was it their chapter books? I can't remember. But anyhow, so they were talking about like art and critiquing people's portfolios and stuff. And I remember she was saying something really important, which was like, if you're going to be realistic with a kid's book, you have to be like super accurate with your realism, because kids just know when it's off. So it's like you have to be like Weisner about it, like Tuesday, where it's just like this beautifully rendered thing. If you're going to stylize, you still have to be really competent in your illustration, because kids just know when something's off. Like, and they aren't going to lie about it or pretend to like, kids. And actually you will see that too. Like when a kid sees a drawing, they'll just be like, well, what's that? I mean, they're both like open to a lot of things, but they're also like way more critical than adults actually in what they like.
Yeah.
And so
they're unfiltered,
Yeah.
They're not kind. That's the best part about kids, because they're so unfiltered and so like in your face about what they mean. Although that they cannot like verbally articulate that.
Yeah.
They could call it like it sucks.
Yeah.
The worst thing that you can hear from a kid when you're being approached with your work is it sucks.
Yeah, or more or less they'll just be like, "What's that?"
Wrong.
Like, "What's wrong with that?" Like, "Why is that person this?" Like so. So it's like super. I mean, that's why there's so many good illustrators, who do kids books. Outside of the fact that it's just like a huge market and a wonderful medium, but yeah, they're super hard to write. Like for me, that's one of the reasons, like when I'm done with this, like I'm doing this not all ages, super heavy memoir, and I think it would just be fun. It might be a fun thing, although I also have a side of me that wants to do some historical fiction. And the project that that's also being shopped around right now that I did the like sample pages for is like a historical fiction that could be all ages, but is a little heavier. But if not, like if I don't end up on that next, I think I'd like to. I do like the idea of like doing something like really fun and all ages, like an adventure story or something. So.
Oh yeah,
So that sounds like a
myself.
fun thing to play with,
Yeah, I promised myself I would do like one type of an adventure story, an all ages one, some point in my life, but it would be like in the 60s probably, when I've done most of the things that I wanted. I do also work with an historical fiction, but it's an adult one, because it's dealing with Diogenes, the cynic.
Huh.
And I've been working on that on and off for about 2 or 3 years now.
Well, that sounds
It has
cool.
lived as long as the longest living project that I've been doing for the past couple of years since 2017.
That's awesome. Yeah, I gotta I don't know. This is the weird thing. It's like I did a lot of like short comics for anthologies and stuff like that. But it's like but now that I'm working on long form, I also do miss that, like the sort of freedom of working on smaller projects where you like can kind of switch back and forth and try out different palettes and different things, and work in different genres, to kind of, I don't know. I think that's really good. And that also develops your voice,
Mm-hmm.
And also allows you to kind of switch gears where you're like, I want to do a story about this crazy thing. And you can do it, I don't know. Maybe when this thing's done, I feel like I'm gonna have to not do comics for about 3 months.
Just like to kick the creative gears a little bit around. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gary
I was
Hodges.
thinking of like just painting or something for like 3 months after this, just to.
Oh yeah.
Because by the time this is done, I'll have invested probably close to a decade on this book series.
So you're getting a couple of comments here. First, Gary Hodges. Children's books are hard to write, and yet, ironically, twice a year I'll be approached by a friend or acquaintance who has an idea for a kid's book and wants to know if I want to draw it for them. Yeah, don't do that. If they can't pitch you like perfectly that idea, and it's just like they have like an abstract that they want to do it, don't take the offer. I beg you.
Oh my gosh, dude. So because my wife does kids books, she gets that all the time. Like she'll have somebody go, "Oh, I have an idea for a kids book," and it's like, if they're paying very well, then maybe she'll take it. But it's like I will say the other form of illustration where you get that all the time was when I was doing T-shirts primarily, like for about a decade. I did T-shirts, and that was my bread and butter. And like everyone had great T-shirt ideas. They'd tell me. Now, were they actually great T-shirt ideas? Probably. I'm trying to think if I ever got. Okay, I had one friend with a great T-shirt. No, two friends with a great T-shirt idea, of like hundreds that would be like, dude, I've got a great T-shirt idea for you. And those people, I just would like split whatever I made because the concept was worth it,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's funny how people come out of the woodwork. I have a great idea, and it's like, do you really though?
Like, have you really put it to pen and really tested it out, just like to see if that could use some alteration, like 16 times, perhaps? Adam Laura, Diogenes is great. I have a character loosely based on Diogenes the Cynic. Jake, can you talk about your Diogenes project a little bit? Sure. although that I'm not sure where to start with it. Um, do you know like the basics of it, or like the gist of the guy?
Roughly.
Yeah.
Been a while. I've always called him Diogenes, but I'm guessing that's incorrect.
No, it's I call him Diogenes or Diogenes, like interchangeably, but it's because it's either Americanized English or it's just like local or whatever.
Yeah.
When we refer to Norwegians, we call him Diogenes,
Oh, nice.
but it's not proper Greek enunciation.
I
I
have
would
no
have
idea.
assumed.
I think we're probably all not using proper Greek enunciation on it.
Yeah,
So
Latin is
I
dead.
think, yeah, I think we're good. Um,
Yeah.
so this doesn't look. His expression's not matching what he's saying here. Um, so run us through it.
Eyebrow, dude. Yeah.
More of that, and then the mouth is gonna have to be. There we go. Much better. Woohoo!
Hey.
So the nice thing about thumbnails and roughs too is you can really work out your expressions a little better, like when you're being super loose, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like from there, like when you get to the finals, it's like you don't forget to you don't end up drawing a bunch of like perfectly rendered mannequins. You know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'll clue in Adam a little bit what I wanted to say. I think I
don't
do have.
reveal anything that's like a spoiler that would make somebody jump on it and steal your idea, though.
Oh no! It's not that. It's not that. Anyone could go onto Wikipedia and read up the story about him, and he's like covered by at least one person out there that is sort of like based on like a YouTube history channel or whatever. So it's not like fresh territory. But my take will be a little bit more not deviant, but a little bit more devious in the way that I want to like present the story, because it starts with more or less about the way that he dies, because nobody agrees upon how Diogenes died.
That's always fun
There's
with historical fiction, though, because if there's something ambiguous like that, that's I can see why you'd want to do it because it's like that's
Mhm.
fun. That gives you room to play.
Yeah. It doesn't start at his death necessarily. It will follow him more chronologically, and I've envisioned it to be set in three parts. So one is the beginning, and the second one is in Athens, and the third part is in Corinth. And then, if I do really want to, I will take a shot at it and do in the underworld. As sort of like there is a couple of stories that I really want to illustrate from like this comedian that wrote a bunch of like stories with classical ancient Greek heroes and philosophers and stuff, just doing a bunch of shenanigans in the underworld with Hades and shit.
That sounds
But
hilarious.
the beginning with will start more or less with this whole mythical approach of him getting his prophecy and such of being given the maxim from the Oracle of Delphi,
Oh,
and
nice.
so just to like seed more of that uncertainty and like this whole myth making, we do know that the Oracle of Delphi did not huff fumes from the ground, because there's not been documented like for real that this whole thing happened, that she was breathing in smoke and all that stuff. But I think that it adds more a little bit of that mythical mysticism to it, as she being like in contact with like the gods, channeling the will of the gods from Mount Olympus. But he has delivered this maxim about debasing the coin, and from what people generally understand of Diogenes through the traditions, that is like the stories that has been told with him, is that he lived out his principle by through this maxim of denying not only societal norm, but he's also putting a satirical spin on it. So you never know if he's serious or is real about his about his philosophy, but he sort of like commits to the role. He's not like Seneca, that is like everything is satirical. Seneca, the Roman satirist, but he's more like a practical guy. So I want to like illustrate him in that form that he was exiled from his hometown in northern Turkey, and he sort of like wanders around in Athens and being in contact with like Plato and Aristotle, the great orator Demosthenes, and other like figures. I thought about doing like a story with Tim the shoemaker, no, Timon the shoemaker, because he's got a funny idea of the world that I think is open for historical fiction.
Nice. Oh, Jeff said, "Good show, guys. Drawing along with you and enjoying the company." Cool, Jeff. And by the way, dude, you're always welcome to hop on if you want me to. I'll send you a link. But if you're just chilling and drawing and listening, that's cool too. So just give me a heads up if you want a link, though, Jeff. I'll give you one. That sounds really cool. Like, I mean, I actually think, oh man, there's so many realms I want to go. I also would love to do an entire story based on neutrinos, like a long neutrinos. Like they're like these weird particles that like shoot through everyone, like thousands at a time, and were untraceable up until I think they finally found, like, we're able to trace them with the Hadron Collider. But
yeah,
it's like just this weird particle that like just would be super interesting to like do a big science nerd thing about. So that's something I'd like to do a comic about. I also think it would be great to do a comic about, and it's funny because like this is one of the reasons I have difficulty. You know, I don't think I'll ever be published by a Christian publisher because I really want to do a historical exploration of like how the church like was complicit with like Nazi Germany. Like I think that would be interesting, you know, like and there was like a huge chunk of the church that like just replaced their crosses with swastikas, and that's like super disturbing. And I'm like, I want to like, yeah, I mean, I want to, you know, hear more about that, read more about it, because it's just baffling and weird and amazing, and would be really interesting to study, you know. So yeah, there's all sorts of I think that's one of the reasons why it's like, as creators, it's important for us to just pick something we're really into now to do, because if you wait for that kind of perfect idea, or you're too fragile about like one perfect idea, you're missing out on the possibilities, because like a lot of great stories start with like a really simple premise and just kind of build out from there, you know. I don't know.
It is indeed harmful for artists, not only as writers and like painters and such, to like get too attached. And if you start to view your project as more like glass, then it's easier to break.
Yep,
that is not a that is a sign of like you need some rock, okay?
Yeah.
Or metal. It depends on the guy.
You know what's funny is like that's a really good way of putting it. Like I like the analogy to glass too, because like I had this painting teacher who, when you were being too tight with your painting, he'd like walk by your palette and just splat paint on it. Like he would like, you know, or like kind of nudge you or whatever. So you're like, huh, and it's like I think that's important, because it's like you can't be like, if you're sitting there like over noodling, like it's just it's bad for drawing, you know.
But I think the point is that don't be a perfectionist.
Yeah, And I
Just
mean, if you
let
are,
mistake be, you know.
yeah, be a perfectionist later, not earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like perfection is a lot easier to obtain when you've done all, like, you do a lot of prep work, like, you do all that stuff. But none of us are going to do perfect work.
Yeah,
We do the
like
best we
fail
can.
real fast. Fail real fast so that you can build out your style through the mistakes and the shortcuts that you're experiencing.
For sure, man. I don't think I would be. I just, yeah. I think it took me a very long time to figure out the style that I work in now. And a lot of it was just from like screwing up and not liking the look of certain things. And then finally just getting to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of like this,
Mm-hmm.
And even that's like constantly evolving. So I don't know. Let's see here.
We reach well into the hour mark. Do you need a break?
I might, but I got to finish this sentence.
Okay.
But if you want to plug some stuff, you can plug some stuff.
I have nothing to plug at the moment. Not that I'm like eager to do. I did, however. We did. I had to correct myself there. Reach 195% on the on the crowdfunding.
Dude, congrats.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the Indie Volt Revolt Sequential Arts issue 1 will be launching this August, I think.
Dude, very cool. Very cool.
Yep.
I just think it's awesome because, like, just from speaking with you, you're somebody who like genuinely likes comics, and I think thinks about like deeply about like how they work and like the process of it, and a pretty strong knowledge of like the history of it. So it's like it's fun to see you putting stuff out and like developing your style and stuff. It's really cool to see.
It's ironic that you say that because I feel like I'm jumping everywhere. I'm known to be like anally retentive when it comes to word usage. So like I use different phrases and stuff repeatedly, but it's sort of the backdrop of me being sort of like in a limbo speaking wise. Not only because of my bilingualism, but with me juggling with reading academic works, and at the same time I want to just like do plain speaking. One of the most important lessons that I want to do with like myself doing this whole Diogenes thing is to live up to that whole premise of plain speaking. That is one of his like personal virtues that he expels on. And if you want to read up on the guy, there is a book from Oxford that it's got the whole like collection from him. I think it was. Oh man, I gotta look that up right now.
Oxford or Oxford University Press?
It is from Oxford University Press.
Okay.
I think it is. Diogenes. I can plug that book at least.
Okay. So I'm going to take my 10-second break while you plug that book, and then please type it into. Can you type into the chats? I don't know if you can.
I can write it in the YouTube thingy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just like write it, like give him a YouTube comment or something, because it'd be cool. I want to check it out too. So okay, I'll be back.
Yep.
Okay. Refill my coffee. Get these things going.
So, the book is called Diogenes the Cynic, Sayings and Anecdotes with Other Popular Moralists. It's translated and compiled by Robin Hard for Oxford World Classics. The book should be about 200 pages or so long, and it puts in a lot of a lot of obscure references to Diogenes, and it also like cross references with other anecdotes and traditions that are based on like the same premise, so that you see different iterations. Like you see a iteration from Diogenes Latherius, his name brother, but also ancient historical like writer, and Plutarch, who is the historical writer, or first one allegedly.
I like what you were saying about plain speak though, because that's something I navigate. I think I've always been bad at using academic speak, even though I can understand it and use it. I just I struggle using it because but every once in a while I'll be talking to somebody and I'll use like an academic word that they aren't familiar with, you know? And it's kind of a weird thing, like learning how to navigate that, like where it's like almost like when I taught like Photoshop or whatever at LCAD my first semester, I had to start toning down some of my art speak because I had been in the industry for like 15 years or so at that point. So certain vocabulary is just like thrown around like among like peers all the time. It's like when you're talking about comics or whatever, if you say blue lines, people know exactly what you're talking about. But if you're talking to like a student, like they may not, like, yeah. And so if you're like, hey, did you do your blue lines? They're like, what the hell are you talking about? Why would the lines be blue? There's different phrases that I had to learn, like, okay, I have to like kind of cater to like, but it's a hard line to juggle. And I think like for me, and I've talked about this before, but it's like possibly because I believe I'm likely autistic. And so I believe I can sometimes sound like I'm talking down to people.
Yeah.
And I don't intend to be talking down to people because I'm just trying to be clear, because I have a tendency to also ramble and be convoluted in what I say. So often, like when I'm trying to just speak simply, not because the person's simple, it's just because I'm convoluted.
Yeah,
but I can sound really pretentious when I do it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel so fucking. I resonate with that so much. In that I'm of the same like thought,
yeah,
or like line of thinking. I'm like everywhere. I chart everywhere and dot everywhere. But the thing is that I've spent so much time like cross checking with different sources and stuff, and like trying to intertwine it with with other things that I know from one field over to another, and so to bridge like that, bridge those nodes so that I could create like a shortcut or whatever. It becomes confusing when you're having a person that are studying one thing, like classical art history, all of a sudden being jumped on by another academic field, like movies or like film.
Yeah.
When you start borrowing terms and colloquial in class colloquialisms from one thing and carry that over to another one, it becomes confusing.
100%, yeah. And I actually do that a lot.
Yeah.
But one of the things that baffles me is like, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but it's like one of the things that frustrated me when I was taking a lot of art history and art theory courses was like, they would be like, this is an idea that was presented in the 1970s, and like we'd have to read like this essay from like some art magazine that's not in print anymore that was like a really important philosopher or whatever in art theory. And they'd be like, this was a revolutionary idea in art. And you're like, but that, like, this was an idea in English literature, like 300 years before that. Like, yeah, and in philosophy, exactly. Like 500 years before that. How is that new? Like, yeah. So that, to me, I feel like I do wish sometimes there was more like cross-pollination of like different majors and different I actually wish there were more people who kind of had like a more general, a broader kind of idea of things, But yeah, that being said, I don't, I'm terrible with mathematics. So like, yeah. That would be my weakness, but I know people who are like super math nerds, and they can tie math. Like good math teachers can tie, like just like what you were talking about with like sort of speaking more clearly in like common speak. Good math teachers can do that too with like really complicated ideas. They can kind of boil it down in an easily communicatable way, you know?
Yeah, that is the Feynman's technique.
Mm-hmm.
That you can like break it down to a first grader
Mm-hmm.
level.
Which for
Yeah.
me is about my level of math.
Oh yeah, same. I got math dyslexia, so I know all about that. But yeah, you're right. When it comes to like there's no like shared or agreed upon understanding, because every like field will have a different take on it, and it's not a lot of intersection. That happens especially with like soft sciences, humanoria, or humanities, and liberal arts, or at least a big section of the liberal arts. And it does piss me off, but at the same time, I can understand that they want to reach into and find those like conclusions on their own, or at least in the way that they perceive it to be like their own. Although that I do not agree with it, and that's because that really set me off into not wanting to have to deal with academia anymore, or like post secondary, because if they cannot agree upon that, then it's wholly hypocritical of me having to continue into becoming sort of like an expert onto one field that cannot embrace every other thing and intertwine that with the whole like general or advanced knowledge basis.
Mm-hmm.
So by having that like disagree or violate my principles when it comes to that, just for the sake of like advancing some kind of deep knowledge or unknown knowledge, when in fact there are traces of it everywhere, but you're not allowed to like bind them together or find like an agreed upon instrument to do that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll go ahead and be the artist. I'll be the change then, so that you can study that and figure it out for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I
Um,
like that a
Adam
lot.
says, Diogenes wondering on a sunny day with a lantern looking for an honest man is the best. Yeah, it's not my favorite one. Also, I'm looking for the bones of your father, but I cannot distinguish them from those of a slave. Yes, it's correct. That was said to Alexander
That's
the
so
Great one.
awesome.
He was a straight up baller. I think one of my favorite ones is the refutation, or like the reproach that it did to Plato. Um, you know the thing that I said about plain speaking.
Mm-hmm.
There is a story in which this is like based on like a metaphor. So Diogenes was wandering around Plato's estate one day, and he was getting hungry, and so he went out to Plato, who was out tending the garden, and he said, um, "Hey, could you please spare a fig?" Now Plato goes on to not spare one fig; he gives him a whole branch of figs. And Diogenes says, "You wretch! I asked for one. I asked for one thing. Why you got to come up with different and why you got to come up with so many other figs? I just asked for one, not a bushel." And that sort of like distills the whole thinking process of both of them. He's like looking for one specific thing, Diogenes, and on like contrast to that, you have Plato, who thinks up the ideas of forms and all these things. He like imagines the world as a very abstract sort of idea um, in his head, and that comes up like repeatedly when it comes to them discussing ideas. Like there's this one story when they're talking about like the cup, or like the cupness of the cup. Um, and I do like the breakdown that Diogenes turns the table around on him of like the cup, because it sort of ties into his method, or like practical method um, of dealing with the cup itself. Because there's another story that goes that he was once drinking from the river, and then he saw a child, like Diogenes. He took a bowl and poured water into it from the river. But then he saw a child create a cup by using his hands, and then all of a sudden Diogenes flew in rage and started smashing the bowl, and for being outwitted by a child, because he had the material, he had the tools in his hand.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that stuff's awesome. It's kind of a bummer though, because it's like there's so much ambiguity about like what was Socrates and what was Plato. Even the stuff that is said to be Socrates, it's like, was that Socrates? It's interesting.
I don't know. When it comes to Socrates, I'm not sure. That isn't even more of like obfuscation, I think, that to into like myth, between facts and myth.
Yeah, it's hard to
And
know.
but
Yeah. But I like that
if
about, I will say from like working in, sorry to cut you off. This is interesting.
oh, go ahead.
Like, I think that with like one thing I've noticed from working in auto bio though is like inevitably you're wrong, like about your own story. Like what's interesting is like I've tried to be as like factually correct as possible, and yet like in early drafts of my script, like I'd show them to like somebody who was there during the time, and they're like, oh, so and so wasn't there. Like they like I my memory had like inserted a person that wasn't there, and it was like a real memory, but I had just like convoluted it to the wrong timeline.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. I can say like writing auto bio, I think, is a really good practice in like realizing how like vulnerable and susceptible like truth is, like in like the idea of nonfiction is sort of fictional. Like because even in your own like at least for me, like even in my own memory, like there are things that I would have just sworn were true, and then like you know I mean, because I'm trying to be as kind of faithful to like the truth as I can with this thing, I've I've checked it with a lot of people, but if I were just on my own, like this would have been like even now, I'm sure some of the facts are a little off. It's interesting.
Yeah, I've dealt with that too, and that
Yeah.
ties a little bit back to the whole discussion of memory when it comes to like childhood, in that
Mm-hmm.
you're uh you're at odds with yourself when you try to recall a memory, because the information and the things that you think you believe are to be true, they're either very heightened into a specific like information, like an emotion, that
Mm-hmm.
the thing that happened to you, by replaying it over and over again, you add more tangents to it, or like entanglements. And at the same time, your entanglements by misremembering also feeds into the importance, or like the presence of an emotional tie to that thing. Like, think for example an episode that happened to you that you felt that you were righteous, that you were unjustly punished by someone,
Yeah.
and that emotion might be carrying into you really hard, but you might not remember the correct reason for why you were punished in the first place, because
Mm-hmm.
you're sort of like making it up as you go when you're that far away from that memory, and you don't remember the causal events as clearly as you would like to, only like the suspended moment, for instance.
Yeah.
um One of my memories that I felt unjustly punished, or over time I felt unjustly punished, was that I was sent into like the pigsty, into the shed where the pigs lived.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and I was not allowed to exit the pigsty, or like that shed, for such and such time. I was meant to be there at least. I think it was like 2 hours,
Hmm.
and I was resting on the scaffolding, of the roof because I didn't want to sink into the mud or into the pig shit. And I remember it clearly that I was there, but was I there voluntarily or was I forced in there? I don't remember because I don't remember the prelude of it. All I did remember was the wretched feeling of, dude, this isn't right. Is it right? No, it cannot be right. And then all these things, they don't they only become like a fake memory that you cannot make, that I at least could not make a sure call that it was right in the end.
Wow. So I don't know why, but my Photoshop has completely frozen. It's pinwheeling, trying to force
Uh-oh.
quit out, and I cannot force quit out. Which means I might have to reboot, which sucks. So, oh my goodness. You want to hold the fort for a second?
No, sure.
Okay.
I can talk with the other people around here. And in
I
the
love
meantime,
Gary just brought up some cool stuff about eyewitness testimony that I wanted to get into, but I'll be right back.
okay.
Or reboot.
Yep. So, let's see. Gary Hodges. With my day job, eyewitness testimony is usually thought of as a gold standard, and for the reasons you're giving, and more is actually shockingly flimsy. I think the basic idea is every time you recall something, there is a good chance you're introducing new elements and losing others, and effectively resaving that edited file. Yeah, I think that there was sort of like there's sort of like a drastic shift in especially with victim testimony, in that they could change or alter the events and actions based on just a week between the event that happened and the witness testimony being asked of first, to run down the basic timeline, and then a month goes by. That also adds on new elements because you're sort of like overwriting essential key information, and that's how you like to start to like notice um, illogical elements coming into play, and especially if people are lying, that is obvious to see that that happens. Because like good liars, they take notes on and being hard fast on the whole event going down exactly like that. Although that they might not be picking up the sudden details that they're dropping in the story the first time. And then when we tested the second time, they don't pick up that information. So yeah, like overriding specific colors is very often the case. I had once thought of like a memory or like a clip that I had seen. It went by a few years at least between times that I saw that clip. I thought that the dress that the person wore was yellow, but that was that was like an entanglement because it was related to my day of my graduation from high school because my mother wore a yellow dress, and um, what I noticed was that when I rewatched that clip, it was pure white, like lily white. Um, so yeah, never let memory be like your best friend. Journals are a little bit better coming to like a self testimony or uh, logs in a sense. What is this all about, Kaiser Bunny? I'm holding the fort right now as Joshua Kemble is gone for the moment and he's rebooting his software. So I'm the guest, but now I'm just a temporary host placement, and it's also a good enough of like a test for myself to see if I can run a live stream. I'm not a good live streamer. Let us be frank here. Speaking of Frank, I do wonder how Frank Salazar is, what he's doing up to now. Salazar Art Nation, for those that don't know. You're a cartoonist. I should hire you to make this T-shirt for me, dude. No, thank you. I do not. I do not commission T-shirts. T-shirt designs. I mean, if you ask Joshua, he might come out of retirement, of course. So yeah. Are there any other projects that I'm working on? Yeah, there are. There are too many to to count on one hand, or two, maybe all my toes as well. And we're back.
Sorry. Yeah, that sucks. I just lost 2 panels.
Oh no!
I literally thought I had saved, and I had not. So, Apple S, everybody, Apple S. Not sure why Photoshop's now not even opening. It's really weird.
F's in the chat, boys. We lost 2 very good panels.
Yeah. Oh well. So yeah, how'd things go?
We got a comment from Kaiser Bunny who says, "What's all this about? You're a cartoonist. I should hire you to make this T-shirt for me." And Gary was talking about the eyewitness testimony, and I gave my 2 cents on 50-cent words on him. So yeah,
2 cents on 50-cent words.
Yeah, I gave my 2 cents on it with 50-cent words onto it.
Okay.
You know, when you got too many syllables in one word, you start to call them very like pricey words.
Yeah,
it was like 50-cent words.
Got it.
You can go back in time to the live stream and do a screen cap. Live stream, Joshua? Can you time travel?
Oh, I will. I will probably if the resolution is high enough.
That is not a bad idea.
That actually is not. Although what's weird is I think Photoshop just crapped out, which is awfully irritating.
Oh.
I swear,
you pay a monthly license on that shit.
Yeah. So the thing that sucks, and now it's pinwheeling. Okay. So the thing that sucks about Photoshop in general is with the Creative Cloud thing, it's just like extremely buggy, and I think it's like, so you have the advantage of like you get upgrades every once in a while. Like a lot more than you would like, you know, pre the subscription program. Like, you know, because before you just have to buy the software and then install it. So if there was like a bug, it's going to last you like for a year or two. But the downside is it's just like completely like, I don't think they vet the program as much as they used to. So like, I don't think they vet their upgrades to the extent that they did. So you just get this like really crashy, laggy program, which kind of sucks because I like Adobe a lot. But yeah, it's the fun times.
I don't know.
I like that idea of going back in time on the live stream, but I don't know. I think I'll just redraw it.
I don't know if it's gonna like hit very big, but I do regret the day when Clip Studio will be going for like the subscription model, if that's the case.
Yeah, I need to mess with those programs. Like I've been like so I'm so used to the Adobe like all Adobe programs that you know, I'm sure there's like a bit of a learning curve, but
you're shackled. Break free.
That's true. I know. I need to break the chains and just escape the.
Cease the means of creative production.
That's true.
Install Krita today, which just recently rolled out a few new features. I gotta update my client on that.
I like that your pitch for these programs sounds a little bit like socialism.
What can I say? I live in a social democrat country.
Hey, I'm jealous, man. I like social democracy as a thing. What would you say your biggest criticisms are of that model where you live, and then what are the biggest benefits? Just from your viewpoint, your own,
As far as
I
I've
guess.
lived through it, I'm very ignorant when it comes to all these things.
Okay.
So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt and limited experience with it. But I do love the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Genuinely love the healthcare system. Not only that you get dental care like free of charge until like you're 18, but
Jeez.
one of the best parts about the mental not the mental care mental care falls under the same umbrella. So the free healthcare that you will receive as sort of like a benefit goes back to the whole like taxing on people. Then again, you could pay up to you will have to pay like a your own share when entering the system, like every year. You got to pay like a certain percentage. So it will be around $150 to $200. I think it's $250 at max. If you pay $250, uh, like immediately at the start of January, you'll get free coverage from whatever. If you're breaking your leg, the healthcare will take care of the bill for you.
Holy crap!
You if
You
you're
know, it's funny because to me that sounds just mystical and amazing, and yet, like, to the rest of the civilized world, that's not that crazy. I think we're like the one country that like doesn't do that. To me, that's just so absurd. Like that, I don't know. Because
I don't want to. That is the worst part about it, because I really want to feed into like the exotic part of it, because there are like things that we have to go through. Hey Frank, I was just talking about you. Night Gang, yeah. The other part about it, I can speak from like an anecdote. When I was getting my diagnosis for autism, I had to like pay for my I had to pay for my share of the treatment, and at like a certain point, I get this like slip. It's like a card, a registered card, a card that you use throughout the year. So if you want to like get a real like benefit of it, you have to pay that amount of percentage, like at the beginning of the year, and then you will have like a ticket to ride, sort of, when it comes to medication and all that stuff, without having to pay much money or any money at all, prescribed or not prescribed.
Wow.
And the way that that whole like diagnostics thing was, like, I of course did the treatment. I went once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then when I reached like the limit, I got coverage for my medication for heartburns and all that stuff, and I didn't have to like pay for my medications. Those are not mental health medications. It's just for my chronic heartburns.
Yeah.
But man, not paying for Xanax, not Xanax. What am I saying? Nexium, which is sort of like the heartburn medication, was great. And I got prescription refills too, to boot.
Dude, so jealous.
But
I love it.
Yeah, I can see that as a very big positive, and I do think it's because of like we can get away with it because we don't have that many of like people to take care of population wise. It makes it sustainable by being like 5.5 million people in a country.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's California.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think that's smaller than California. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, now I'm curious. I don't want to say that without. Let me see.
With the straight face.
Population of California. Yep. 39.51 million. And that's 2019. So,
Ooh.
yeah. So maybe not.
So yeah,
but we're a small country, like our little state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's a good route to go. And what's funny to me is like some of the criticisms I've heard of it, are like, hey, there's long wait times. But it's like I have friends who live in countries with socialized medicine, and they'll be like, dude, it sucks. I have to wait like a month for my surgery or 3 months for my surgery. And I'm like, yeah, we do here though. Like we have long wait times for surgeries here. It's like if you need like a big operation and you're not like, having gunshot wounds or something that has to be treated immediately, like, yeah, you're on the queue. I had a friend who had to do chemo recently, and they still have to have you wait like a certain amount of time because it's like, and that's under a non-socialized system. So I don't know if the wait times are as bad as I think it's painted by people, but maybe you'd be
I do have one person in my family that has a large like a large laundry list of things and history when it comes to the medical system here.
Okay.
And they could speak for themselves about the whole problems. But one of the things that are true is the waiting line for it is that you got to be scheduled for at least 4 or 5 months in advance before you get into surgery. Like I know that person just went to surgery. Is going to go into surgery very soon. But it wasn't talked about until like, I don't know, March, probably, this specific one. And they've probably done, I don't know, like a 3-digit sum of surgeries. That is not only cosmetic, but also like cancer treatment and the like.
Yeah.
That person has been in the ringer for quite some time, ever since childhood. That person was born too early, and so they had to be incubated.
Oh no! Yeah.
And was open with an open stomach.
Oh jeez.
Yeah. So they've been through a lot. But the best part about that person is that they're like the Frankenstein's monster, in that they could pull through anything and everything, because they got like iron will.
Yeah.
They aren't affected as much of certain things, but that's also like the backdrop of it. Like there's too much of that overclouding that you don't take the consideration of the of other people's like stresses and stuff, because you got so high that much confidence built into it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I think it's I've definitely seen that. I have a friend who was born with like a fetus hand. He was a roommate of mine, and he is one of the most competent guitar players I've ever met. Like, he can play guitar better than anybody, but like he's playing with like a stump, and then like he has like a wristband that he made that has like a pick attached to it. So he's just like picking, but he's doing like folk guitar. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And he's an amazing guitarist, really good basketball player. Now he's like a member of the whatever the Magic Society is that does like the Magic Castle. He does like Magic Castle, like magic shows with one-handed magic. And I'm like, it's just like I can't do magic, but part of it is because I had that moment like a lot of kids do, where you get the magic set and you learn a few tricks, but I just didn't have the willpower to like sit and, with art I did, but with like that, I didn't have the willpower to like sit and practice and practice and practice. And I think like it's kind of like you were describing. It's like because he had that disadvantage, he like would not let anything stop him from just practicing over and over again until he could do it better than people with two hands. You know, it's kind of crazy. But I do think like I don't know, like knowing a little bit of hardship or at least having a perspective on it, like definitely helps helps you have a resolve and like grit, you know?
Yeah. And that is sort of the weird part about this person too, is that they seem rather unfazed about any type of challenge. They just take it head on without having to really think much of the consequences, but rather the more optimistic, positive, happy side of it.
Yeah.
That there is something that you can enjoy and not take for granted. That is sort of the lesson that was passed down by that person to the kids, at least. In that, you gotta you just gotta appreciate you gotta appreciate life as it is, and that is clearly reflected upon the way that they think right now about life, being like able to display gratitude, being able to take others into consideration a little bit more and take things serious, but also at the same time they just like go out and be more appreciative of the ability to be doing things rather than to take pity and just sit down and cry about it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Sounds like an inspiring chap or lady. I don't know which, but sounds like an inspiring person. It's cool. I definitely I don't know. I think okay, so benefit healthcare system, pretty cool. Okay, what else?
What else do you like about it, or do you want more? Do you want more positive things?
I want more positives. I like the idea of starting with the positives, and then you can just slam in the negatives and be like, and we also, you know.
I love the great nature of where I'm living at. I don't go out that much anymore, mainly due to being chair bound to having been like constantly connected to the internet, because I'm a severe user like that, and I do love reading comics. So
Yeah.
getting my ass to read outside, no sir, I don't want my comics sun bleached. But I appreciate nature, and I enjoy like the simple activities that you can do, like go on walks, climb, fish, all these things.
That all sounds like things I do not like doing. I'm a terrible person because in theory, I would love doing those things. And anytime, like, it's funny because my personality is weird, because like if I have a friend who's like, hey, I'm going camping, you guys want to come? Like, I'd go camping with them, and then I'd have a blast, and I can do it. And I'm pretty decent at hiking and doing stuff like that, because when I was a kid, I did like the Boy Scout stuff and all that, you know. But it's like, but I never opt to. It's never something I'm like, yeah, I'll do this outdoor activity. It's everything I do is usually very isolated, and even music, right? Like music's not like that's a pretty indoor activity unless you're playing like stadiums, you know?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be grown up to be raised not having like house arrest, but outside arrest. So you had to be like outside at least a couple of hours before you could come inside. And
That's
I'm like,
true.
fuck, that is completely antithetical to my habits and life patterns. Because I'm a cat person. I live indoor and I stay indoor. Fuck that noise. But whenever you've like convinced me to go out for like an activity, or something that could be like recreational and still stimulating, I do not shy away from like trying it out too, and like try to initiate it with myself, unless I'm having like a bad day or whatever. But like socializing, like drinking and all that stuff, no thanks, I'll pass. I'd rather be in the woods grilling marshmallows or hot dogs or whatever, and drink cocoa and all that.
Nice. That sounds fun.
in my older years, I do have like thought about wanting to drag out close associates of me and just like island hop, like take my boat out and ride the water and out to like the scary, not the scary, but the like the coastline where I live, um, away from like the place that I am right now, and just grill on like the seaside and
Nice.
drink and just relax. It's that is sort of like a thing that I really want to do, like in the U.S. because there's a lot of beautiful sightings and stuff that I wanted to like visit. I
Yeah,
want to go up
there's
to like Washington and Oregon on
mhm.
like those big mountains, and I want to go to like Devil's Tower,
Mhm.
and I want to go to like the woodlands of um, not Colorado, Connecticut.
Nice. Yeah, I I get a little spoiled at like living in California because you have the nice thing about California is like it's really consistent weather. Like it's pretty warm, like in a
Hmm.
good way, but it's not humid. So that's part of why it's like super insanely overpriced to live in California because it's just like it's great weather.
Oh,
But the cool thing about the state is the state alone has like you have mountains, you have like trees, you have forests, you have oceans, like beaches, um, deserts. Like almost every landscape is in California. So, like,
yeah.
one thing I love about California is like if you just do like one of the funnest things to do, even though, like I said, I'm kind of an indoor guy, but it's like if you just do like a drive just all the way on PCH
Hmm.
and just stop off occasionally on like at different locations. Just take PCH all the way up the Pacific coast. It's like it's one of the most beautiful, memorable experiences you can have. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it is kind of insane. Like there's like Oregon was gorgeous. Like one of the things I loved about living in Portland was um you'd be in like downtown city, like a very developed city, with just like all the city stuff, right? So it's got like all the food and drink and commerce and stuff of like a city. Excuse me.
You okay there?
Yeah, wrong pipe kind of thing.
Oh,
Um, and then like along with the city, you'd have like a thriving art community. But if you drove for like 15 minutes, like just 15 minutes, you'd be like in like this one area called Multnomah Falls where it's like six waterfalls in a row. And it feels like just some absurd, like scene from The Hobbit or something.
yeah.
But then like 10 minutes later, you can be back in, like this crazy civilized city. And like, it was cool to have just like that whole dichotomy like right there. Whereas like in LA County, it's like you have to do a bit of driving to kind of actually get to like anything but like concrete.
Hmm.
Um, although we do have like great access to like beaches and oceans and stuff like you know, but yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know if that's a unique thing to my personality, but it's like I don't daydream about travel that often. I should,
Yeah.
but like I have siblings that like totally have like wanderlust, and they like my sister lived in Australia for like a year and a half, and like lived in London for like a year and a half, and like just does the whole travel thing. I've never had that bug. I don't know why.
I don't
Um,
have that bug myself, and I've moved quite a lot around the country. So like my country, like like a good 20 times, and I've seen my fair share. But I
20
never understood like
times.
something in those numbers.
Wow,
20,
that's quite a
24,
bit of moving.
25. I think I'm approaching 20, the 25th or 26th movement right now. uh, in June. Um, but I don't have like that travel bug either. I've been places outside my country. I've been to Cuba. I've been to Sweden. Been to Denmark. Been to a little bit into Germany. Been to London, and been to the Czech Republic. And it just feels like wherever I go, I'm just there. It's not exotic. It's just like I'm there, and I'm witnessing things I've done differently.
Yeah.
But with the U.S., I'm a little bit more curious about the nature because there's a lot of things there that I would like to see, like the extreme end of it, like the salt flats and the Arizona, Nevada desert plains,
Mm-hmm.
or further down to New Mexico and around Albuquerque and all that stuff, or visit the bogs in Tennessee or stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like fun nature around the U.S. that I would like to go around in.
Yeah, the crazy thing, because you were just talking about like the different countries you've been to,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just thinking geographically, like it's kind of similar to like I've been to Colorado, like
Mm-hmm.
because like the distance is like not that far to get to a different country.
Yeah.
And I think that is like one advantage I think you have, whereas I guess the advantage we have here is like our country is like just so massive that it's like, and it's got so much variety that it's like I could drive for like I don't know, months and not end up in Maine, like um
Which mean?
so like the top
Yeah,
right
I
hand
figured it
corner.
was. Yeah,
Yeah,
I figured it was a Stephen King one.
yeah. But it's like it's just an interesting thing where although some of my best memories are like doing just a straight drive to like Colorado and just stopping at different places and maybe diverge a little bit and stop by like Zion and Bryce like in Utah, and then kind of like tangent your way through to like all these different beautiful places. It is crazy. It's a crazy country, but I
I do
do
hear. Yeah.
I really envy comics that aren't US comics. Like I really do think like uh I think I don't know. I might just have this romantic view of it, but it's like I feel like France has a way more advanced, smart view of comics. Japan has a way more advanced, smart view of comics.
You want the worst part?
England does,
You want the worst part of it?
What's that?
I'm making one right now about the U.S. and it's set on Santa Catalina.
In Catalina, like on the island?
Yeah, Catalina Island.
Nice.
Two Harbor.
Okay. So this is pretty rad. I used to go to Catalina quite a lot because when
Oh
when I went to
hell yeah! I need to know some things. Okay.
okay,
You
so
shut up.
yeah, because I'd go there like because I went to college at Cal State Long Beach, and to get Catalina, you just literally like the harbor of Long Beach, like that's where all the boats go to Long Beach. I
Yeah.
mean, to Catalina from. So yeah, so it wasn't unusual to like occasionally drop like $30 and head over there, go to Drunk Beach. Yeah. Early college.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason I just got so I was just like so and wrapped like with the isthmus of Two Harbor. Like I wanted the story to like be right there, smack dab in like a fictional place, and I just wanted to chuck so much California history into that thing. Build on like things that hasn't like existed on the island at all, like it being purchased out by two different families, not only just uh the gum magnet,
Yeah, the
the bubble
Wrigley's.
gum yeah, the Wrigley. I created like a different like family that does like got control of the northern point of it.
Oh, nice.
I call them Milgrim, and they sort of like had a crazy like like a crazy union system where like built train trams to connect from Avalon into Two Harbor and all that stuff.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I want to keep like small things like the whole like shooting the movie on Catalina with like the buffaloes, having the buffaloes exist there too, because it's one of like the only places where they didn't like get rid of the American buffalo.
It's actually crazy because there's like a crap load of buffalo and they roam pretty free there.
Mm-hmm.
The weird thing was like I guess that's all because Wrigley was like a big fan of buffalo, so he was just
No,
like,
he was very. He's like a conservatory type.
yeah,
So and like 80% of the island is allegedly like a protected under the conservative or the Catalina conservation
yeah. I
effort.
will tell you, if you ever go to Catalina, don't do the yellow submarine thing. It's a total ripoff.
Okay.
Just letting you know, there's a couple submarine things you can kind of pay for,
Yeah, but
and that
glass
would be the
bottom
one.
glass bottom viewing has not been my thing either, so I don't care.
Glass bottom boats there were kind of cool. It depends. So there's one that I like that I don't even know if this exists anymore. This one I actually went on when I was a kid, and it was the coolest thing ever. But this might be like that skewed, memory thing that we were just talking about. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm just making it more nostalgic than it was. But I remember they have flying fish. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
yeah, and so they have these glass bottom boat things that are really cool. But they'll also like turn on, like, if you go at night, like they'll turn on the lamp light, and then you just have all these fish just start flying at the lights. It's the coolest thing ever. Although they're
Yeah,
very smelly, but like, they're fish, so what do you expect,
yeah,
but it's pretty cool, Um,
yeah,
it's Avalon's gorgeous too. I love that the architecture at that pier is just kind of pretty incredible. So I could see
yeah,
that being really appealing to like draw too, like, things like
yeah.
that theater.
Because it's sort of like built on the Art Nouveau
Mm-hmm.
and Art Deco,
Mm-hmm.
or like Mediterranean combination with Art Nouveau and Art Deco. But I thought of instead of following that sort of like path, I thought of adding more of like streamlined modern to the mix with
Nice.
the design of Two Harbor or like the town Two Harbor.
So this is going to be on Catalina, but this is like sort of a
Yeah,
fictional. I love it. That sounds really fun.
I
You should just have everybody speak like saying "dude" and "like" all the time.
no, I've constructed a like a Islander speak sort of.
Nice.
So there are like in passing words and phrasings like oh you're a mainlander or like a mainie and all that stuff.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so it's own
Yeah.
slang. I like it.
I've been this is the longest running project that I've been doing with comics. I've been working on this on and off since 2017, or at
Oh,
least like late 2017.
oh, dude, this is getting so crazy interesting. Sorry. In the chats, Corey
Yeah, the
mentioned
chat.
roadside attractions, and then Frank was and then it sounds like Frank and Jeff are negotiating some kind of mini comics thing. And I agree with Jeff. Frank, you should totally collect all your minis into like one big book. Um, and then Corey so Frank mentioned Pee Wee's Big Adventure, which is an amazing movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a Tim Burton film too. It's really
Yeah,
good.
it's got Tim Burton vibes. But
Yeah.
I agree. Frank, collect them and call them a minibus, like a mini comics omnibus.
Oh, I like that. And then yeah, like now they're talking bug museums. This is just too good. I love roadside attraction type stuff too. That's one of my favorite things. Although I'll agree with Corey on the like enjoying like a long road trip just for like the weird roadside stuff. The downside is I would not ever do that on a motorcycle because I don't want to die.
Yeah, that's sort of like the that is a negative that I could point out to this country. Roads, they are not like straightened out and like lined up like to like beautiful pavements and all that stuff. It's craggly, it's crummy, it's so many like twists and turns and all that stuff. It's the
Okay.
worst.
Like crappy infrastructure, or is it just
No, not
because of
crappy.
the?
Like maintenance wise, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
The problem lies in that the state has to go around and like fix the whole damn thing by themselves, so they don't hire private companies to do that stuff.
Oh, okay.
And that leads into that runs into like a whole hullabaloo of like different problems, because you got the Europa Road, and then you got the which is the highway infrastructure, and then you have the local roads, which is the regional roads.
Okay.
And yeah, the regional roads aren't getting that much love, unfortunately. But you gotta love being at the edge of death every time that you're doing a fucking turn around, like a scrappy hill of sorts, like straight down into the woodland. I certainly grew up on one of those patches, and it was a nightmare scenario every time when you just like stare down into one of these things.
Yeah, there's a couple of those in Oregon. There's definitely some like crazy twisty turny like. I wonder if some of that. Do you think some of that has to do with the landscape too? That the roads are built around, like where it's just like hard terrain. Or
Here's the theory. I believe the roads were built initially by following the horse tracks, or following the tracks that were laid up by horses. Because when you look at American railroads and road history,
uh-huh.
the network is more like gridded.
Yeah.
While it's here, it's basically like trudged up by having a bunch of people and vehicles and all that stuff driving around, and just like open up the area for passaging. But it
Mm.
was basically built throughout um, as like a temporary thing by having a lot of horses and buggies and all that stuff driving up the earth and all that.
I buy it because your description reminded me of Oregon's roads, and Oregon is one of those places where I think, unlike the train building for like a lot of places were built based on a train, or like more gridded travel, but Oregon was settled in a very similar way, where it's like a lot of those roads like were not initially like car roads, and so it's like you have some really weird mountain pass drives where you're just like, human beings should not be making this turn, should not be making this climb, like, but on a horse, like, they wouldn't be too bad of a trek.
Yeah.
Although then again, I
the
guess, I mean, there's the whole video game Oregon Trail. So I think as long as you don't die of dysentery, like, it wasn't too bad.
well, I don't know. I always like chucked it up to just being remnants of horses and buggies and all that stuff.
That's
And
awesome.
that they just I like the idea of like slapping some asphalt on it and make a road out of it.
Yeah, that is hilarious. Like, I don't know. It is interesting how roads are built and stuff. But I would say, like, California has,
Oh
like,
yeah, and dynamite. Don't forget blowing
yeah.
up new roads with dynamite.
Oh yeah, well, we have a lot of that in my area because so there's a freeway stretch called the 14 where they just like um pretty much just blew a path through a mountain. I think that's before they kind of had any idea like that might actually not be a good thing to do. They're just like, let's just blow up half this mountain. Okay, cool. Yeah, that won't have any problems later on.
Well, there are certain like areas that I'm going to speak from like a particular place in Norway, which is called Kongsberg or Kingsburg in English.
Kingsburg?
Yeah, Kingsburg.
Is it like that's okay? Go ahead.
So the city was founded on the by the one of the Danish kings, and it was essentially a mining town. And it wouldn't be far off to say that they built not only mining industry, but also a sawmill industry, because the river that ran down from the mines ran down to the town. And over yonder, you had Notodden, which is another city that were famed for mining cobalt. And so to get everything over to Kingsburg, I assume that they mined up the road and trudged up the road by combining both the mining industry and the sawmill industry from those times over to connect cities, in a sense.
Interesting. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I find that stuff fascinating. I don't know. So to me, it still sounds like the Northwest to me. It sounds like Washington.
It is very Northwest, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Because that sounds very similar. And what's funny is like a lot of Oregon too is like based on like a lot of the early things there were like fur trading and like logging. Whereas the area I live in now, like, is like this patch of uninhabitable desert where a bunch of people found pyrite and were idiots and thought it was gold, and so they established this whole town out here, and were like mining, and ended up just getting a bunch of quartz and being like crap, and like and then just bailing. But that's why we have a railroad. Like, so that's how this city I live in was founded. Was like a railroad was made to come out here because they thought there was going to be like this giant gold thing. And they built like this big hotel. And then within like a year, they were like, we made a big mistake.
Kingsburg had like a huge silver deposit in the mountain region from where they mined. So there's a lot of like silver that was extracted. And there's a lot of shafts that are evident. But I've never been personally into either of these things.
That sounds kind of like a fun trip, though. Check them out. You know?
But I could definitely tell that one of the creepiest trips that I ever did around Kingsburg was not related to the mines at all. It was actually sort of like a. Do you know those cave splunking type of like deals where you go underneath the ground and then suddenly like the thing winds and like turns ever so slightly smaller and smaller and smaller till like you can't get through the passage unless like you cram yourself through the shaft.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I know that there was a couple of places like that in the US, but it was just one of the most claustrophobic things that I ever did. And there's like a small little river by the side of that pit, and it ran into like the way that we descended.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So, and as it like spiraled, it was like a staircase spiral. It felt like a staircase spiral that you went downwards into the earth, and it's going to be like ending up somewhere where you're going to be having to crawl. And I stopped right there before the crawl space thing started happening because I had water up to my feet, like a good chunk of water up to almost up to my knees, because I was relatively small back then. I think it was 5'6" or something.
Yeah.
And it really, really put me out. And so I started like ascend, and I just noticed that how far that we had gone. We're not like gone for a very long time. I think about half an hour, but
yeah,
no, never again.
So there's a Corey will be able to answer this because he lives closer to it, but I think the Narrows are in Zion, and now I have to look that up because like we did a trip when I was like early teens. Narrows, I believe that's Zion. Yes, okay. So there's this area in Zion. It's like a canyon, right? But there's a hike called the Narrows, and it's basically like this section of the canyon where you look up and you just see canyon walls, and it's about as wide as you as a person.
Ooh.
and all you see is canyon and then just like this little slit of sky like through it. And you're at the base of this canyon. And then to hike it, it's one of those hikes where in the US, like some hikes that are like highly problematic or you could die on, like they have like a number for like, if you hike right now it's at a 5. So, and I can't remember if 5 is bad or whatever, but one of them means like you're pretty much at risk of dying in a flash flood.
Yeah, that is
number 1. You're at like a 1 out of 5 risk of dying in a flash flood.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think,
and it's kind of similar to that because you have moments in the Narrows where it narrows to the point where you actually have to turn sideways to get through, and you're also like neck up in water. So it's like it's one of the most treacherous hikes, but it's cool and beautiful.
Corey says, yeah, the Narrows are in Zion.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool, but it reminds me of that because there are a lot of moments in that hike, depending on the time you do it, where like, yeah, it feels like you could, like the water could just go.
Have you ever like been in touch with like glacial potholes or giant cauldrons?
Giant cauldrons?
Yeah, giant's cauldron or giant's kettle.
Giant's kettle. I
I
know there's a Devil's Punch Bowl out here.
Yeah, but glacial potholes is essentially just potholes that have been formed by the glacial ice.
Oh, dude, okay, I've seen this on documentaries, but I've never actually been in one.
Yeah, I've me and my family, we've traveled to one particular place that we've dived into them, and they're so fun. It's like straight down, and it doesn't like end. It goes for like, I don't know. It could go on for like 50 feet below water surface, or it could go for like 100 or 150.
Oh, that sounds...
It's really deep. But giant's kettles, I can't recommend you enough. If you got a fear of water, you will really feel that you have claustrophobia and aquaphobia at the same time. And if you really believe in sharks, got a fear of sharks, it's the best part because you can believe that there's some kind of like underwater spirit or something, or like a corpse that has been dumped into these potholes. It's fucking insane that whatever that you can conjure up your imagination when you're like bathing in them.
That's crazy. That sounds really cool though. And then is there some kind of weird sort of light in there? Like what does it look like in those things?
The pothole itself, it doesn't like reflect any light. It's like a straight shaft almost, straight down. So the shaft itself, it blocks out the sunlight from the bottom, so you can't see it down at the very bottom of it. You can see the edges of it and then crawling ever so slightly downwards, but it's sort of like a microscopic representation of how the ocean works, and that you could everything is like you can see everything on the surface, but as far as when you like go downwards, it starts to fade dark because light can't penetrate.
Wow, that's so cool.
The same sort of like principle applies to the giant cauldrons.
That's awesome. That's rad. I want to check that out.
There's one in Archbold, Pennsylvania. It's called the Archbold Pothole State Park. And then there's the Moss Island, the legendary what was it called again? Crusaders treasure. Sharks aren't real, Jake. I don't believe in them. Damn right. Coconuts kill more people than sharks do too.
I'm like, I having lived in like Long Beach and Huntington Beach, yes, they are real. Huntington it's funny too, when you live near the beach, what's weird is when you actually go out and literally Jaws style, there's like a sign like, hey, you probably shouldn't go in the water. There's like some killer sharks. Which every once in a while you get one of those. But yeah, I don't know if we ever had a great white near us. I'm trying to think if they even frequent that spot as much. But yeah, I do. I know they've come to Southern California, but I'm trying to remember. I feel like they were more prone to like warmer water or something. Because the thing that sucks about our ocean, at least on our side of the country, is like, so it's great because it's not Florida, and like pretty much everything about Florida sucks. But the one thing that's nice about Florida is like the water. Like you could literally like just walk out in the water. You're not going to be like shivering because it's like nice and warm.
All right.
Here it's like if you're not like wearing a wetsuit or whatever, it's usually like the water is just freezing in the ocean, you know. So
is that?
Yeah.
All right. I've been
but it's not like Colorado I mean Chicago colds or anything, you know. It's like
I swam at the best beaches around Cuba when I was there. I was also like at this like dolphin type of like thing. There was like there's like a spot where they like train dolphins to take photographies and stuff.
Nice. Dolphins are rad, man. They'll like follow your boat and do tricks and stuff.
Yeah, too bad that they're like rapists.
Yeah, they're terrible. They're terrible animals. Like they're kind of they're not the best species.
But have you touched one? Like have you touched their skin?
I don't know if I've ever touched a dolphin. No.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest feeling. It feels like they're
slimy or scaly.
No, it's not either. It's like ergonomic skin.
Weird.
Yeah, it does sound weird, right? It's like when you touch it, it feels like rubber. First, it feels like rubber, and then it feels like when you try to like stroke it, your hand sort of like it slides with it, but it feels like it's resisted.
Oh, okay, so it's like almost like if it were covered. Yeah, so it's just literally rubber. That's insane. I didn't know that.
Huh. Why are only whites so great?
And then Jeff's
Mexican shark.
Jeff's follow-up was pretty good too. He's like, Frank's drinking again. All right, so let's see here. Oh, I know exactly what I was going to do here. Starting to zoom out for a reason, guys, and then I lost track. So, and it's been like the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I was about to mention the 2-hour mark. We're gonna take a cup.
I might have.
I could go for a glass of water right now.
All right. Well, let's both take a 20-second break or something.
Dude, I can't run to the faucet like that.
Run to the faucet. You better be back in 20 seconds.
Oh shoot!
Timer's on. I was kidding. All right. I'll be right back, guys.
I was here back. I'm back. 30 seconds flat. I did it. I appreciate that you guys are paying attention to the stream and having a good time in the chat as well by talking amongst yourself. Hope you have a wonderful day too.
So one of my favorite things about doing these live streams is like the ability, like it is really cool to be able to just kind of hang out with somebody in a completely different country than my own and chat about weird philosophy and stuff. It's just a cool opportunity, you know?
Yeah. That is sort of like it pays off, but at the same time, it's sort of like, man,
At sometimes I wish that I didn't I was awake and I could just be in bed right now. now it's all right since the tables have turned in a way that you're up late at night while I'm awake. Like I don't know,
That's true.
almost 10 a.m. So I feel comfortable about that. But it feels bad having to like being up around like 1 a.m. to at least 6 a.m. just to catch all the shows that you want to like watch, especially when you have friends across the pond that are running the shows.
Yeah, 100%. We have that problem with the East Coast too, because it's like the time gap. There's just some people like Marsh. Like I love talking to Marsh, but we're on such like off hours. It's hard to like find a time. For me right now, it's like almost 1 in the morning. So my goal here is before it hits 2 in the morning, I need to finish this thumbnailing this page. That's what I'm going to do. But who knows? Are you guys talking about pollen levels?
Yeah.
Pollen levels suck so bad here.
Are you allergic?
Oh yeah, I have really bad allergies, and I live in the desert, which is not necessarily a great place to live when you have allergies. The one nice thing about where I live, though, is it's like one of the few spots of LA County where you still have a clear sky. Although what was trippy was like during the whole COVID shutdown, like there were all these photographs of like the night sky above LA, and it was like, what the hell is this? Because Los Angeles is like pretty, it's pretty smoggy.
Yeah, I feel like I dodged that bullet. Both of my parents are allergic to pollen, and for some reason that didn't carry on to me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Although that I have like a bad.
I got like a bad issue with dust, but that's a different side altogether.
It's weird. I'm wondering, are there people who don't have an issue with dust, or is it like it's more accelerated than like your average like aversion to dust?
I don't know. I'm really bad at dusting my my place, so it's on me for not doing my proper cleaning. But you know, there's an adage for it: a messy room is a complicated and busy mind. All right.
Yeah, I understand.
If you don't have time, if you don't have time to like deal with what's in your head, or like if you're dealing with something massively, or like it takes over like everything in your head, you're bound to leave some things unorganized and covered in dust bunnies or like dust cities or you know. Then again, I can definitely feel it when I haven't dusted at. I can feel it in my fingers. And I sometimes wonder if my lungs are filled with dust because my bedroom is probably not the best. It's not getting enough air like filtered.
Yeah.
I don't have like a what is it called again? One of those like air ducts into the room directly. I have one above the window installed. Like I pulled that one out at least, so there's some air circulating. But I could really use an air duct.
I mean, luckily my wife is very clean. I am kind of okay at like clean, but I'm like disorganized chaos, or organized chaos, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I'm on the same.
So like my art table is right now not as crazy as it will be in a week when I get it back to the disorganized chaos that it is. But yeah, I have trouble. What's weird is when things are organized, I have trouble finding things. Like I have my own little like weird disorganized organization. So I'm sure that's a real fun one for my wife, like to deal with. But yeah, like luckily she kind of balances me out in that sense.
If I had like cups and such placed around,
it makes it easier for me to organize. So if you got like a cup that was filled with either like pudding or like chocolate chips or whatever, just pop the lid off and put pencils and all that stuff into it, and yeah, sure, it works because then it's sort of like organized in one way or another instead of being all loosey goosey.
Yeah, I have like quite a few little mugs that I use to like keep pens and stuff in. So it's relatively organized. It's just like scatterbrained in a weird way, like which fits my personality, you know.
What fits my artistic personality right now in my life?
So let's see here. Now there's like a race war going on with sharks in the chats.
A literal race war with dolphins and sharks.
Dolphins and sharks just fighting it out, like those racist sharks and dolphins. There you go. There's a plot for a comic.
Wait, it reminds me of this one animated sequence. I think it was like a Mondo animated short. Not Happy Tree Friends. It's something completely different. There was like this shark versus octopus, and they were having like a shootout in the water.
It was like this one random tidbit that I'm just like picking up. Like, I haven't thought about this in forever, but it just stands out for some reason. It's like one of those like bugs that shouldn't exist, like visual bugs.
Yeah.
You know? Rather than being like iconic, it's remembered for being more absurd.
I love that stuff. It's sounds like a Brad Neely cartoon or something. I used to love those too. I don't know. Have you ever seen like Brad Neely's stuff? He did the Washington song where it's like, he does a lot of stuff, a lot of internet meme animations that were pretty classic back in the day. But if you're ever bored, look up the Washington Rap by Brad Neely.
Wait, is that the guy that made like no, that's South Park.
Baby Cakes?
No, I was thinking of like that whole Thanksgiving thing, like the Second Amendment and all that. There's like a distinct animation with that's got like a lot of Trey Park and it was made by Trey Parker, that animation I'm thinking of.
Oh, nice. Okay. I do like Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They crack me up a lot. Basketball was funny. I don't know if it holds up now, but I used to think it was really funny. My favorite, there's like an ongoing bit in there where there's a villain and this, like the bad guy is constantly being flirted with by this woman who's she's basically just trying to, because he's very wealthy, so she's just trying to kind of like marry him for his money or get with him for his money. But there's this ongoing bit where like he'll say something to her, like it's like kind of just playing off of the trope of like the rich villain, like, and his, you know, he's like womanizing with like a person who will become his henchman or whatever. So he uses all this innuendo, and so he'll say something like, well, maybe you should stay and buff my lobby. And then she's like, yeah, maybe I should. And then it'll pan to her with like a giant machine, like buffing the lobby of the hotel, just all mad. And it just keeps that bit going like throughout the entire movie, where it's like, it's the stupidest movie ever made. One of the stupidest movies ever made. I love it.
Harry Patridge on YouTube, he did sort of like that same skit with like an animated short. He's Hal, the misinterpretive porn star. That's sort of like the porn actresses are giving like those sexual innuendo clues that's sort of like tied to the set and the storyline. And he's like, Do you understand? And Hal's like, oh, I think I do. And then it's just cutting off to like him taking it literal.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's like there was a series of children's books called Amelia Bedelia, and that was the whole bit of those children's books was like this person who just took everything literally, and she was like a maid. So like,
oh yes,
yeah,
I like her. She's a great ginger representative character.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole idea was
the series.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole idea was just like, hey, like, you're driving me bananas or something, and then she'd come back like driving bananas or like just stupid gags like that. Like, and there were like a whole series of books like that. And I think the time I was really into that book, there was another book I loved called Incognito Mosquito. That was about a mosquito detective who solved all sorts of bug-related crimes. So, yeah. The things that come to mind at like 1 a.m.
Oh yeah, I see here when where she puts the lights out and then just like take the light bulbs out and put them on the out for drying.
Yeah. So just like anything said, she'd just do like literally, you know. Okay, let's see here.
I don't know, for some reason in the series, like Amelia Bedelia might be an autist.
That's true. Totally.
Like a autistic representation.
Totally. She's one of us.
Oh no. She doesn't understand sarcasm and aphorisms and stuff. Takes it too seriously.
I love it.
Oh yeah.
I have no. Okay.
So you're entering the real production, like art-wise, next week?
What's up?
So you're going to enter the like final art next week when it comes to the second book?
Oh no, I'm not going to be done. These are just roughs.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, like I don't know how long it's going to take to wrap this up, but I should be probably done with like the rough stage at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be like going into Adobe Illustrator, making all the panel borders, type, then photo references, then penciling everything, and then hand lettering and inking the entire comic.
Okay.
So it's going to be a while, but I'm close to a third of the way through. So right now I'm probably about over a quarter. So yeah, but when I finish this up, that'll be about a third of the work I have to do on the book. Yeah. I wish I were
good progress.
I wish I were finished next week. That would be amazing, but no. But I'll be finished with the roughs and thumbnails, like probably. So this is step 1 of my crazy process.
Yeah, I got a lot to look forward to when it comes to the roughs. When I've gotten the word back from the editor, I could just dive right in because I prefer to do my roughs in pencil instead of doing digital as of now, because I feel like I have a lot more control of the figures and layout and all that stuff.
Yeah,
at that stage. And
it's funny because I do the opposite of what you just described.
Yeah,
you know?
I hear that a lot of experienced artists have sort of like flipped that production like totally opposite. Like they start digital and print it out and do the rest of it like hand drawn and stuff. Like Russ Leach from the UK, he does that now. He just like does everything like sketches and everything like that digital, but then decides to print and do the inks on paper.
It's a good way to work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool, though. So you
Josh,
like doing your roughs by hand, though?
I was reading a comment from Adam. Sorry. For now, yeah, because I had like a steep learning curve doing that first detective story. Not only that being the first digital comic that I did, but I noticed that I needed to do more tighter pencils, or like be more thorough when it comes to the penciling stage. So as to not like getting fussed over with details that I should have been done and dusted with like 2-3 weeks before, you know?
Yeah. That's
Josh,
cool,
I love
though.
that your finished pages are so elaborate that your roughs look like most people's finished pages. Yeah, they do. Like they could be put on to pause or webtoons to Adam.
Thanks, man. That's cool. I don't feel they look good, but it's always hard like to assess your own stuff, you know. Like I think we all feel like, I don't know. I always feel like somebody's got a better process. Somebody's out there doing it better. I'm still waiting to find the person who's found like the very quick route to doing comics, like, and enjoying the process.
Yeah, that's sort of like been my thinking of it. Like I want to find the shortcuts,
Yeah.
but I want to do like the heavy lifting of finding that out. So I've like tried to prod and test it and all that stuff, but to minimal success, at least for now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a much slower artist than some of the artists I know. Like my friend Chris Cawagua is like super quick, but even for him, like the pages take a long time. It just takes a long time. Comics just take a long time. How dare they? How dare you, comics?
Yeah, it's like the perfect storm of two mediums, pictures and words.
Well, I think that's the addiction of it, though, because it's like,
oh yeah, like
it's
when it started, not easy to quit.
Yeah, and it's the puzzle. It's the puzzle that you'll never solve, because like the second you get good at one thing, the next thing comes up, and you're like, oh crap, I didn't think about that. Like there's just endless things to explore. I'm gonna do a cutaway here. This is gonna be a little weird, but it'll look cool when I get there.
One of the like craziest part of like comics is that it doesn't take a lot to like redo or ruin a message either. So back in April, the manga series Attack on Titan wrapped up to less fanfare or like to a controversial fanfare. Some people didn't like the ending, and some people just absolutely adore the ending. And I wasn't sure if you froze up for a moment there because you looked very focused.
No. I'm actually I'm listening and drawing.
But
so yeah.
The strange part was that they felt under such pressure of like living up to like a good ending. They decided to add another 5 pages to the story, or 5 or 7 pages to the story. So rather wrapping up at chapter 139, it's called 139 and a half.
What?
And it redid every possible like it not redid, but like changed the message overall. Like the way that it ended, it was some kind of like finality to like, yes, this is how it's going to be, but they essentially recontextualized the whole thing being an absolute waste. It's just a documentation now of a cycle that is being respun. It's sort of hard not to get into spoilers, like
yeah. Well, that's
talking
okay.
about this, of course.
Yeah.
But imagine yourself that you have a decisive victor, but with all the sacrifices that come along with that victory, it will be undone by just a couple of pages, just a couple of panels that goes through like just go through a couple of like years in between panels,
Okay.
and everything is like cyclical.
So they
And
basically pulled a Sisyphean ending where it's just basically like, yeah, you guys have just been watching the boulder.
you watched a boulder tumble, and now you get to see Sisyphus smile. Well, not exactly like Sisyphus smiling, but yeah, they really pulled a fast Sisyphean one, just like
Wow.
adding a couple of extra pages, like a half chapter.
So that's so it's weird. One of the things, some manga, not all manga, but one of the things that I find frustrating with some manga is because of the serialized nature. It
Mm-hmm.
it has the same kind of weakness that a lot of American like superhero comics have, where it's like, and most like honestly just long serialized fiction has, like where it quite often like you can kind of have these cop out endings. um I don't know if that's one of those cases, but it's kind of like the Lost thing, where like Lost is like this amazing TV show for a little bit and was really interesting, but like just the ending was just so absurd. um
I don't think the ending is the greatest sin. For me, it's power creep,
yeah.
especially in shonen series.
Yeah.
Because when you start to introduce new systems, you start to introduce new ramifications and lores or
Yeah.
understanding of the world as it is.
Yeah.
And that happened with like Naruto and Dragon Ball to great length. With Naruto, you had like the sage stages and the deepening of the Rinnegan and all the all these like power factors. It became sort of like a power factory.
Yeah.
Where like if you didn't have that power or that power added onto this base power that you were exploring through like the first part of the story, you were never going to ascend or attain godhood of like mastery or whatever, and it pissed me off like to no end, especially for like Naruto, because it leaned too much into it.
Yeah.
While as for part one, it was structured so that people had to think about their surroundings and what their limitations were with like
Yes.
chakra and all that stuff, because you saw clever usages of not only strategy but also the practical solutions that was like made through environmental manipulation and observation,
Totally,
rather
dude.
than to rely on powers.
I also liked before they reveal that, like, because the whole thing about Naruto, like at the beginning too, is he's like a he's the unlikely hero, and he's not like initially, he's not like the kids that grew up like with the parents that like were raising them to be like the next expert, right? He was just this poor kid, orphan, like who's like nobody in the society, who then through hard work, grit, and determination overcomes the odds. And you have characters, like Rock Lee or whatever, who are like that too, where it's like he doesn't have like the skills, but he's like just through grit and determination gonna get through it. And then they just flip the script on it and are like, no, actually, like he now I'm forgetting what so he's like actually just the great grandson of the first Hokage or whatever. And I'm like, oh, come on, like that sucks, because like the whole point of Naruto was that he wasn't supposed to be like the pure blood character. So I felt like it lost the plot a little bit there too. For me, it was less interesting, but I did like some of the stuff. It's just when it started getting into like filler episodes, like to me, where it really lost me was, I'm forgetting even the plot line because it gets really convoluted, but it's like they're kind of going around collecting the different foxes, I guess, or whatever. It's like different people have like these things contained in them, like spirits contained in them, and there's like 9 of them or whatever, and they have to find them all. Anyhow,
yeah.
So they're like,
I never counted like filler episodes in part one as being canonical.
Yeah, but it's so obnoxious because it's like this is like, I think by Shippuden or whatever, but it's like they ended up introducing a character who was like a hip hop Hokage, and I was like, okay,
Killer B. Yeah, I love that guy.
yeah. I was at that point. I was like, they've sunk to a total low because he's like doing like 1990s style raps, like, and I mean 1990s like actually Blondie level raps, to like to do his fighting and special abilities, and I was like, I don't know if I don't know if I can be into this anymore.
Yeah, with Killer B, he's an outlier, but I think that the translations did a little bit dirty on him.
Yeah, that's true.
The way that he's like doing like the sentence structuring and the way that he rhyme schemes,
yeah,
is way more like Japanese hip hop, and you can definitely tell when you're listening. Because it is definitely influenced by like Cali rap and all that, but that is sort of like how Devilman Crybaby used rap, because when you like listen to Japanese rap, they like got a whole like different type of schema just going around in the flow and the beat, and I've always chalked it up to like being, this is Japanese rap, not US rap.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can definitely see that being taken you out of the experience, of course.
Yeah. Well, it was also just like I had followed the show for so long and sat through so many filler episodes of ramen where I was just like, but I will say, like, I still love a lot of it. Like, and I wouldn't mind like kind of recatching up with it because I think like the pervy sage is a great character. It was really fun. Especially the first like 2 seasons were really cool. It's a good story. It's fun, and like I will also give it credit for building a very unique world, which I think is really cool. Like one thing
I couldn't buy was like going so far as deep into like the moon goddess, because it's like heavily like used in the last that is the title of the last Naruto movie. I hate it, but I fucking hate it because it like recontextualizes everything that everyone knows about ninjutsu and genjutsu and taijutsu, and bloodline, the Kekkengekkai, and all that, because essentially everyone is relative. It's just like they took delineations and paths throughout the different like bloodlines and stuff, so they're like spread out, and it's just like mind-boggling how they could go out like ruin canon and lore like that.
I love when they build lore though, and it's like it
was better to like having like it being mystified. Like, have no explanation of it. It's like the same problem happened with the last no, not the last Avatar. What the fuck am I saying? Avatar, Legend of Korra. It went too deep. It went too far back into the origin point of how the elements were like passed around and where they came from and all that stuff. It was vaguely hinted at in the last Airbender with Atla. But Legend of Korra, they straight up ruined canon.
I loved Legend of Korra, but I there was a little bit of canon issues. To me, I always hate when a story. There's a couple of things I really dislike, like the 10 years later ending always bugs me on a story that's like very paced out. Like that's one of the cop-out endings I can't stand. I feel like Ender's Game, like the book, is so brilliant. And then at the very end, it just lost me because it literally does the 10 years later. So you're like intensely in this experience of this kid being part of this war simulation that he doesn't realize is a literal war. And then kind of that reveal at the end. And it's this intense thing where you're there with him like day by day. And then it goes 10 years later, and it's like instantly pulls me out of it because it's like you've had this kind of pace and plot device. I feel like Harry Potter did that, like the last Harry Potter, where it had an okay conclusion and then it goes 10 years later and it has like Harry Potter with his kids and you're like, wait, what? Like you've been following like a year a book, and then the last book's just like, by the way, this is a year, and then 10 years. And you're like, wait, what, 10? Like I know it's a plot device that sometimes is necessary, or maybe it's thrown in for like fan service, but it's one that I don't like unless the book the whole time is like done 10-year skips, you know? And then that one that you were talking about bugs me too, where it's like, you know what? By the way, this whole reality you've been watching, it's an illusion. And you're like, oh, come on. Like, for the ending. You know,
like
I'd rather just have the indie ending where you just kind of go, and that's how life is.
When it comes to like endings, like 10 years later and all that stuff, do you got the same issue when? Have you seen The Sleepers?
Sleepers, I feel like I have. Remind me.
Yeah, like the judge, not judge, but like prosecution, movie with Brad Pitt. Like there's 4 boys that are sent like to a
yes
to like a facility because they pushed a hot dog stand down the metro.
Yeah.
They had like an ending like that in that, but it was only like a few weeks later. They're sitting and celebrating the 2 guys being released, like when they're adults, and then there's like five or so weeks later, this and this person dies and shit. I think it's also like related to like that trope where you get flashes for I'm trying to think of like movies that got like that after credits example, you know, like Boys in the Hood.
Got it.
Yeah. Where like Ice Cube's character, what happens with him like a couple of weeks later, and that Trey is going after like graduate or like goes into college in Berkeley or something. It's like a very 90s trope too. Like you're like
where you'd be like after, you know, like, or it would just be like even the end title sequence where it's like so and so was prosecuted, so and so like went on vacation and you know, and that kind of makes sense, like with a biography or something. But
yeah,
I don't know. I like more tight endings where it kind of follows whatever structure we've been following. So like if it's a structure where it's like where it is jumping like quite a few years, like I don't even mind an ending like that, you know, where it's like if you're watching kind of like, I don't know, like a Forrest Gump kind of thing where it's like flashing to different eras of time.
Oh yeah, but that's like part of the plot too.
Yeah.
So it makes sense like to have that present in the in highlighting different periods and eras of history and all that stuff. When it becomes very cyclical, it ties itself around with the boy entering the bus and all that stuff at the end, like when he went to school and met Jenny. But Daria, the animation series, did that sort of like the same thing too. And you had like 5 seasons with these 4 or 5 seasons.
Daria was so fun though. Like I my favorite bit on Daria was like the fake news organization Six Sad World. Like on the next Six Sad World. That's great. I don't know, but I don't remember how that, like I haven't watched that since I was young, so
it held up. It held up. Like past season 3, perfect stuff. I love it.
Nice.
I haven't seen it in like 5-6 years now, but when I watched it, I was watching it. I was getting into American shows like Duckman and King of the Hill. And man, I had a blast. Like I can't remember for shit what happened, but I can instinctively recall that from season 3 onward, especially the one when she's at the not the scout camp, but she's like at the camp because she's forced to like work at the camp, and then she meets someone who's younger than her, who's just this like apathetic and miserable, like it's like meeting her own self, like at that age too, being very cynical and all that. And
That's so
they get
funny.
like this small intimate moment, despite like being played comedically like Daria is, but it's one of those like episodes that opens up like a whole new dimension to her character and what her fears are, and that is very evident with Jane, like in season 4, at the end of season 4, because they start like having fights and all that stuff,
Yeah,
and it
don't they have
feels
like a
very
falling out?
real.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. I feel like there's something authentic about that. I don't know, like I forgot about the Newhart. Oh, that's right, the Newhart ending. Wasn't it like didn't Newhart? Yeah, I was like they did pull off that it was a dream, like in a very funny way. I also
Yeah, wasn't
remember
it
there was another
Dallas?
Newhart where he was a cartoonist. Like Bob Newhart ended up having like another show where he was basically the same character, but he was actually a cartoonist. And I remember that being really cool when I was a kid.
Yeah, the last Newhart series finale. Yeah, it was also popular. I think like a whole like season of Dallas had sort of like it was all a dream into it, like season 8 or some shit. Jeez, there's like a lot of flirtation when it comes around to that whole like it was a dream or whatever. The best part about comics is that it can get away with it, and you know how?
How?
Panel gridding,
Yep.
because the grid can tell if it's a dream or not a dream.
You just like my dream grid. I actually did that a lot on the graphic novel I did before Two Stories called Jacob's Apartment, where it played a lot with bouncing from dreams to reality.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I do a dream sequence, I would like round the corners of my panels.
Yeah.
And then whenever it wasn't a dream sequence, the panels were straight.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, you can do all sorts of stuff. That's why I like Winsor McKay stuff so much too. It's like I feel like dreams and comics are just like really, really wonderful together.
But at the same time, comics are a dream in
Yeah.
in like a fever dream sense. But I thought about like developing my own visual language, and I was like confronted with this thing when I was reading this writing book called Wonder Book, which is breaking down like the basics of literary writing to like a very digestible size. It's good to introduce if you got like a 10-year-old, like a kid who's like between 10 to 14, give them Wonder Book.
Okay.
It's
Write that down now.
it's the author that wrote the original book of Annihilation, that sci-fi movie on Netflix.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. So he's got like a bunch of interviews, like with Neil Gaiman and George R. R. Martin and Ursula K. And all that, Kayla Wynn. But I noticed that there was this one segment they wrote about dreams. Do not write them because that will betray the audience. The audience like mental projecting, because they're like playing the thing as if it was like a movie with their own like perception of the occurrences and events. But in comics, you can get away with it by just like denoting it through the way that you present the art. So if you like doing it inside a panel, or doing it with a combination with the frame or just the frame, you could sort of like excuse it because you don't play to the expectation what is inside someone's head, but rather you're doing it on paper.
That's so true. I like that. I think there are things I love about comics that you can kind of only do in comics. And I think those are the things that I like trying to do in comics. And I think it's not that you can't adapt comics, but I always feel like as cartoonists we should be trying to do at least trying to do things that can only be done in comics.
Yeah. There's this one book that I can't remember at the top of my head right now, but it deals with just like this one spot. Um, so you imagine that you got a living room.
Mm-hmm.
Visualize that you're working take for example panel 5 right there in your comic. Now imagine it being like sequenced and like chopped up into other smaller panels, but they're traveling through back in time and forward in time at the same panel. So you have like so you present like an event that happens in the 1970s, but then you also represent a thing that happened like 30,000 BC or some stuff in the same panel.
That's awesome.
And I was like taken aback by the power of how you could like manipulate time and space like that, because you could present different bits of information in the same panel sequence. And it was like a weird experimental like thing that I saw. I'm like, oh, I love it.
There's one that I can't remember the I should remember this artist. He's really funny and experimental, but there's one called Meanwhile that does a lot of time travel and a choose your own adventure kind of vibe to it, but it's a comic. It's kind of insane. And then I always felt like Ware was really good at that too. He has a lot of short comics where he'll kind of like show like the progression of like a tree, like in a city, like throughout, 400 years or something. Like, and you kind of watch like the whole cityscape change and like, but it's the same shot. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with time in comics. I feel like Seth is really good with that too. Crumb is good with that.
Crumb did that one pager with that one spot of like an American diner and stuff with like a house at the it's so and like one comic with like Mr. Natural, like you saw a whole civilization passing with this one meditative like session that he had.
Oh, that's so brilliant too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He just plopped down, like Mr. Natural plopped down, have like a long running meditation at the it goes on with like panels, and you see like the rise and fall of a civilization and blows away into dust, and then he just rolls up the mat that it was sitting on and just continue out of frame, out of Diogenes. Shit, I love that.
That book is so good. Like, there's just I feel like I have to read that, like reread it like once every 3 years, and then remind myself not to read it for another 2 years, just so that I can keep doing comics. Because it's so like it's just so perfect. Like, there's a few like that. Okay. So I have wrapped my page. So I am gonna wrap this stream, but I'm glad I wanted to finish this up before 2, and I did. I finished the page, so I'll post this to Instagram. Jake, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everybody in the chats too who came in. Jeff, Adam, Corey.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah, but Jake, where can everybody check out your work?
You'll catch me doing updates on Twitter. I know it's a horrible shithole, but I thrive there. All right, at JT. Those are big capital, and V, not W, Vister. So J Twister.
I absolutely love it. Cool. All right, and for me, same as usual. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit that bell. I'm pretty sure everybody in the chats is hopefully subscribed. And if you guys haven't yet, this is $8. 2 stories, $8, 60% off. Which is, I hope they change that before I do in-store signings, because if I'm like selling comics in store for like $20 and somebody looks on Amazon, they're like, but I could get it for $8. But at that point, I'll just be like, yeah, just buy it on Amazon then. Like,
but you miss out the signing.
Yeah, but anyhow, make sure you guys check that out. And yeah, if you're local to SoCal, in the LA County area, I'll be doing a signing on the 2nd at Basis Cards and Comics in Lancaster, California. And then I'll also be doing a signing on the 3rd at Voodoo Vinyl in Lancaster, California as well, which is a really cool like record shop. And then hopefully progressively work my way through different shops in Southern California. But anyhow, Jake, always a pleasure having a conversation with you, and everybody in the chats. You guys should check out all of their work. So if you're rewatching this, there's a lot of good artists in our little circle. So, all right. With that being said, we will see. Well, I will see you guys probably tomorrow, and actually, I guess later today on Artcasters on Scott Cirkland's channel. So, all right. See you guys.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.